Hello, everybody. Well, happy Wednesday. Welcome to another episode of the Hang Up here online. I'm Matt Dillahunty. Man, I've had a crazy busy week, so I'm not digging in deep on all the politics stuff, although I'll definitely be getting back into that next week. Although people want to talk about it, there's tons to talk about. We're still waiting on Epstein stuff, but there have been new rulings about releasing some of the sealed files from the grand jury related to Ghislaine Maxwell. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Trump have imploded, and Marjorie Taylor Greene has almost sounded somewhat reasonable and good on a number of issues, but don't let that fool any of you. Jasmine Crockett has started her Senate run here in Texas, although she is sucking up a little bit too much to AIPAC for my liking. There's still problems in Israel. There's still problems in Venezuela. There's still problems in Ukraine. And yet FIFA has given Donald Trump its brand new Peace Prize. I heard that Major League Baseball might be giving me their Peace Prize. I'm not sure yet, but we'll see. It's been a busy week or so for me. We had house guests, as many of you know. Paul and Shannon were down visiting. Then, in the middle of that, Arden unfortunately had to leave town to go sit with a dying grandparent. I got a call that one of my family members was going in for surgery. They were in surgery today. I got a text message that he's doing well. As a matter of fact, here's the one I just got 30 minutes ago. He's been assigned to this room. He's in the room getting all situated, getting him some nice warm blankets. He has a nice water cup coming that he can start sipping. Yeah, so they basically removed lymph nodes from his neck and for cancerous reasons. And I managed to get the flu, had to cancel a reptile expo, which I bought a brand new shirt to wear to. This is my Epic Loot Exotic shirt that I was going to wear to the reptile expo. And since I couldn't, I decided I'd wear it tonight. And I basically slept for 3 days until Arden got back. And now I'm at the end of recovering. It was a pretty nasty flu. But tonight, I really want to focus more on apologetics because it's been a sticking point and getting worse for a little while. We don't get a lot of theist callers. As a matter of fact, I looked over here just now and I see that we do have a theist caller. So I am going to shorten up my intro and I'm going to shorten up my welcoming of my guest because we're always going to prioritize theists. And I can talk in between theistic callers if I need to. But I want to talk about apologetics for a number of different reasons. Tonight's guest used to teach it. I've been spending the past 20 years kind of teaching what I called counter-apologetics, pointing out the strategies and tactics and fallacies in common apologetics. And we've noticed that there have been fewer calls, fewer attempts to try to persuade. The debate bros, which I've talked about many times before, they've decided, they're going after the Muslims, they're going after ex-Muslims, and they're going after the same kind of misinformed, ill-informed folks that they've always targeted while ignoring those of us who seriously study this and are skilled at pointing out the fallacies and errors in their reasoning. They have no empirical evidence. They have no valid and demonstrably sound arguments. And they're constantly trying to defend a weakened abstract version of their belief, like there must be some thing that started it all, in order to get you to charitably lean their direction so they can either trip or push you into full belief of there's this guy and here's what he thinks and here's what he wants and we know what he wants and he definitely doesn't want you to have sex with the wrong people or at the wrong time or in the wrong way. Some of them are not particularly fond of foreskin. They're definitely not into equality. Let's get it all down this road, all the way down there, just because you became convinced that something can't come from nothing and that even is even relevant to the discussion. Tonight's guest is former Christian rapper, minister, great person, Brady Goodwin, who sat down with Eric Hernandez, who I've debated a couple times, and I only got to watch the first 45 minutes of it. And I'm actually already working on a rebuttal expose of what I think is an incredibly big mistake that hopefully, since I know Eric, I don't think it was intentional. I think he just doesn't see this mistake. And so I'm going to whip up a video to do it. But I wanted to get you on to talk about apologetics and whether or not you and I are essentially immune and trying to perhaps spread that immunity, or whether there's something we're fundamentally blocked to, and whether the apologists have just given up. You know, some of them I think are deceived. Some of them I think are deceiving. But I think the first question is, when you were talking to Eric, I mean, Eric was teaching apologetics at a Baptist university, and they shut down that program. And when you asked him about it, he said that essentially that they said they were going to go in a different direction, and he wanted to leave it at that. And you did leave it at that, and good for you. But what did you take from that when he said that?
Yeah. First, thanks for having me back on the show with you, Matt. It's a pleasure to be here. When he said, they're going a different direction, I'm going to leave it there. I wanted to respect that for sure.
Yeah.
But it just left all kinds of questions in my mind and I've heard this from several people. I've heard Christians begin to say things like apologetics is beginning to do a disservice to the Christian faith. And I think what they're saying, if I had to read into what that disservice is trying to give an answer to all of the challenges that are coming up. If you're not able to give what is it? Is it 1 Peter, 2 Peter that says, be ready to give a reason for the hope that you have?
Yep.
If you're not able to give that reason for the hope that you have, I could understand why somebody would say, we probably need to stop trying to give answers. We need to stop. You're basically being unbiblical by not being willing to do that. For an entire school or university to have a department of apologetics and then say, hey, let's not do that anymore. I think apologetics was probably a lot easier before, completion of the Human Genome Project or comparative, religious studies in terms of ancient myths or ancient Near Eastern cosmology. And apologetics was probably a lot easier before the internet took all of those findings and published them. And so I don't know, but I would imagine if in some boardroom there was a meeting and they realized that we probably should stop putting so much on the line. I don't know.
Yeah,
but that was my first thought.
I heard it and I was like, like for anything, when you see something, you start making a list of candidate explanations for it. And I have no idea which of these are necessarily true, but for a university to essentially cancel a program, it means either they didn't have sufficient students who were interested in it, or they didn't have a good instructor, or they realized that there was some reason why they shouldn't be in a biblical or Christian university. They shouldn't be teaching that it was either causing the sort of problems that you've heard about, or that it just wasn't effective. And so, my take, as arrogant as this will sound, it's fun, right, is that they realize that teaching folks to spin against scholars and skeptics was not as productive as preaching to the plebes and the pliable. And so you go after the same crew that you always have. But like, I remember there's a Muslim imam that famously said that he'd rather talk to atheists because, and this is a joke, but the point still stands, because atheists say there is no God, and Islam says there is no God but Allah. So atheists are already halfway there, and it's a ha-ha moment. But there's also a halfway there the other way that is not just a ha-ha moment. When you get Muslims and ex-Muslims, they've already been convinced that there's a God. All you've got to do is convince them that they've got the wrong one. So in that sense, you may actually be halfway there.
Yeah. And it's kind of a cheat code to talk to people who, I think I remember back when I was a Christian, there were times when I felt like, I never said it out loud, but I felt like the other theists, even if they weren't Christians, there could be some kind of allegiance between the Christians and the Muslim and whoever else, because at least you believe there is a God. And can we at least fight together to get the watching, listening world to okay, whether it was the cosmological argument or the moral argument, let's present those together and save our in-house fighting. Not that we're in the same house, we're in the church, you're in the temple, you're in the mosque, but save those fights for when we're not dealing with the atheist. And so you're right, it is an easier task to go after other theists as opposed to going to talk to atheists.
I want to dig in more on this stuff, and I want to get your thoughts and you talking about teaching apologetics and what your take was then and everything else. But we've got a theist caller who's on topic, and I mean that's a blessing in and of itself. So let's go ahead and get started here. We've got Renee calling from California. Renee's pronouns she, her. Renee says, I don't think ex-Christians should be held to the standards of apologetics. How you doing, Renee?
Hi. Um, yeah, like I'm sort of new to this, but I just wanted, I guess, to add food for thought or my perspectives.
Sure.
I I feel like that the goal should probably be to focus more on showing Christ to people over trying to use arguments. I think I heard someone I think it was what do you mean? Like it's a YouTube channel that I watched. Like he said that a lot of people who are brought to Christ, it's because of their actual relationships with people who know Christ. Like when you actually take the time to care and not in a way that feels very like I'm trying to save you kind of way, but just actually caring about another person and just sharing your faith, I guess more organically, like that can really like make the difference and bring people to Christ, like instead of maybe arguments, because I feel like that is one of the reasons why a lot of people are anti-Christ nowadays, is because they feel like it's forced on them being Christian or Christian ideologies without any relationship to God, and they feel like, why are you trying to force this on me when I don't believe as you do? And so that's sort of my perspective.
Mm.
Does someone showing that they care for someone else, how does that show someone Christ?
Like I like caring, like actually caring about what they're going through, like talking to them, like just showing concern, like in a way, like if they're going through a hard time in their life, actually checking in on them,
Yeah,
talking to
I
them,
know
just
what
showing genuine care.
caring means, Renee. What I'm wondering is, so I'm a big old godless heathen. Are you saying that I can't care for people?
Um, no, I feel like anyone can care, and
Okay. So
I just feel like
if I show I care and you show you care, how are you showing Christ and I'm not?
um like my perspective is that it's about like just having empathy and compassion for other people, but trying to do it in a way where you're sharing your faith if you feel like it's something that could help someone. Like this is my first time talking on one of these shows, so like I'm not really familiar with it. Like I didn't even know that you were an atheist. I just heard about the topic, and so I was just sharing my perspective.
Mm.
Yeah, we're
But
not
I
only
don't have any issue with
no,
an
not only
atheist. Like
atheists, but we're both ex-Christians, and I was starting to be a minister, and Brady used to teach apologetics. I'm just like I understand what you mean by caring, and compassion and empathy, and these are things that I talk about frequently as a humanist. I just don't know. Well, I don't. Maybe Brady's got a question that can get us closer to what's going on, because
I do
I'm
have
not
a
seeing how
question.
it's Christ.
I do have a question, Renee. And here's something that I saw only after I left the religion. And I know Christians don't like calling it a religion. It's a relationship between you and God. But after I severed that relationship, after I left Christianity, I found myself being around people, and like Matt said, still caring, and in some cases caring. I don't know if I want to say more, but it felt a little more authentic because I wasn't caring for the person for Jesus. It wasn't Jesus caring about them through me. I cared about the person. And I wonder for the Christian, if, like you just said, Renee, you can have this one path where you're evangelizing and proselytizing and trying to preach to people, or this other path where you're loving and caring for them. But I don't know if many Christians ever stop to think about this. Are you caring for people with an ulterior motive? Like, what does it mean if I'm showing you concern and you just lost a loved one, so I'm calling you to check on you, but I'm really only doing that because I want you to think my God cares about you? What does that mean about your actual concern for that person? Is it inauthentic at that point?
Yeah, like I can see your perspective, like, and I do feel like there are issues in Christianity. Like I do believe that there is a God, but I definitely agree that there are issues like in the faith, like that people like in the faith don't really care like they should. And I've personally experienced that, like from people professing Christ, but feeling sort of judged by them, or feeling like they were treating me in ways that I knew weren't like godly. So I can see your perspective. Like I but I feel like I believe that Christ is true. It's just the problem is that people are still flawed, and we tend to just act in ways that are kind of just selfish. Like even when we come to Christ, like that kind of selfishness is still in us, like inherently to be self-focused. That even when we are doing what we feel like we're supposed to do in Christ, like it can still come out of self-interest. Like it's hard for me myself. Like I still struggle with love, but I know that it's something I need to do, like really loving people. And I know that there's real love, like the love that Jesus showed, and then there's the love that is more like, I guess, for show, like people doing things to just like
Sure.
win people to Christ, but it's more, I guess, performative.
Yeah. I'm wondering, because I was going to ask you about how much truth matters, Renee, and then you said that Christ is true. And I'm not quite sure what that means, but and maybe you're not completely sure what that means either, but let's assume we know what it means to say Christ is true. How can we know that Christ is true?
Um, well, I mean, I know like not everyone is going to believe, like I'm just speaking for myself, that I do believe that Jesus is true. Like
I understand you
I've
believe,
had
but I mean,
some
I'm asking, why do you believe it's true? And do you think we should believe for the reasons you do?
um like I don't know if I would say that people should believe me for the reasons that I do, because I feel like sometimes our experiences will lead us to God in different ways. Like it could be through Christianity, but like it might be through different experiences. Like for me, I feel like my personal experiences, like I felt like I was going through a lot mentally and emotionally, and that led me back to God, like going through a negative time in my life and praying to God to like help me. And I feel like he gave me signs that made me believe that he was real, and like that what I was experiencing was true. But for someone else, it might be different. But I do personally believe that God is the truth. But like I I don't know that you can ever truly, like I don't feel like on this side of heaven that we'll ever be able to fully uh make it just undeniably true that Jesus is true. Like if he wanted us
If
to have
that's the
this
case,
undeniable truth of him, he would make it. So
Renee, if that's the case, is that also the case for Islam and Judaism and Scientology and Hinduism? Are all of these just something nobody's going to find out till they're dead?
Like I don't think like I don't think that we'll ever fully know, like, on this life. Like, there is evidence that I've heard that demonstrates that there is likely an afterlife, and I've heard testimonies of people talking about how they were an atheist and then they had a near-death experience, and they had experiences of seeing God or something like that. And so, like, I don't, you know, I don't claim to say like I can fully express like that God is real
No.
on this side of heaven, but I feel like
I'm asking Renee, what about these other religions? Are they also in a position where we can't tell which one of those might be right as well?
yeah, we're in a position where we won't be able to fully like
Then why pick
be
one?
able to say one religion is true over the others. But I do believe that
Great,
there's more
Renee.
evidence for Christianity than some of the
Really?
other religions, like
Like what?
Mormonism.
Like what?
But I have to look into that more myself. Like, there's a book
Okay.
that's called The Case for Christ, and that was something that I
Yeah,
wanted
it's
to look
by Lee
into more.
Strobel.
I know
It's
that
by
there's
Lee
more.
Strobel. Lee Strobel's a fake skeptic who asked fake skeptics to evaluate his position. His book has been complete. There's an entire chapter by chapter rebuttal of every book that Strobel's put out because he's not a good skeptic and didn't interview good skeptics. But my question, I guess, was if we can't tell which religion is right, why pick one?
I mean, no one has to pick a religion. They don't have to pick anything.
But you did.
I believe that Jesus is the truth, and so I'm just speaking from my perspective. But like, there have been people who have struggled, have gone through a lot of different things, and when they found God, it did help them through their healing process of things that they've gone through. And the principles of Christianity does like help you in a way if they're practiced in the right way, not in the ways that some Christians want to twist the word of God, like actually forgiving our enemies, like healing, like those things are useful, I believe, like to have like what the Bible actually teaches, but anything can be twisted and perverted into something it isn't. But I think
Yeah.
it's worth pursuing, even if you're not sure. Like, it is, like, I think it's worth pursuing to see if it's true or not. And if you decide that it isn't true, then you can make that choice. But I think
What if it turns out that Islam is true, and by failing to follow the tenets of Islam, you end up in hell?
Well, because I do believe that Jesus is true, but I feel like if
That's
someone
why I said,
prays
what
that
if?
God reveals himself in truth to that person, that he will do so. I've heard
Except he doesn't.
testimonies of people online
Except he
where
doesn't.
they've asked
Except he
God to
doesn't.
just reveal
Except he
himself
doesn't.
to them,
Except he
and
doesn't. Except he
he
doesn't, Renee. Except he doesn't, Renee. You don't think that Brady and I prayed honestly as believers when doubts crept in for God to reveal himself to us and nothing?
like I've prayed to God myself at points, and he hasn't always responded, and like I've wondered about this. Like,
Has
I
he
don't
ever
fully
responded?
understand why God sort of like doesn't always respond, or doesn't respond right away, like when we
Does
ask
he ever
him to.
respond?
Like, God does, like, he has given me signs when I've prayed, but it's not always just
What,
instantaneous.
what's that mean? What's it? What's a
Like
sign?
Okay, so like I was going through a really dark time in my life. I was praying to God to like just to give me a sign like that he cared, that he was still for me, and like some days later, I was walking home like after I'd missed my bus from like my job, and I like when I'd gotten to like a metal railing, I saw the words like "Keep going, Renee," like spray painted across, and it felt like a sign that God was, you know, really speaking to me, because I have dealt with suicidal ideations, and like I can't understand why like God doesn't always make it clear for us, like when he speaks to us, or when he doesn't. But I personally do believe that there is a God, and I think that it can help people if they're open to it. But I don't think that anyone should be forced or made to do it. Like God gives us free will, and he doesn't try to force anyone to accept him.
Can I ask a question real quick? I'm going to do what they tell lawyers to never do, is ask a question that you don't know the answer to. But I know there's a lot of ways you could spell Renee. I'm just curious. When you saw Renee, keep going Renee written on the railing, was it spelled the way you spell your name or a different kind of Renee?
It was spelled the way my name is spelled, Renee.
Okay. And so you believe that?
Do you think it was spray painted
Ahead,
before you prayed or after you prayed?
I saw this after I'd prayed.
When was
Like
it
it was
painted?
like a few days like after I'd prayed, and like it just felt, like a sign, like what are the odds that I would see something like that?
Okay. What are the odds, and what makes it so unbelievable that it's answered prayer?
I you know I know that anyone can say like, oh well, maybe it was a coincidence or whatever, but like, really, what are the odds that I would just see something like that? And especially after praying like a few days ago, and after missing my bus, like the only reason I even walked home was because I had missed my bus.
What are
Like
the
I
odds? What are
know.
the odds? What are the odds that
Mhm.
you would see something that included your name? Pretty high. We're sort of trained to see our name.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just like Renee, it was keep going, Renee. And, I know that not everyone will, see it that way. But, for me, that was God answering a prayer for me. And I've seen that for other people, like that sometimes God has answered prayers, like it might just be seeing a rainbow, like as a sign, or just something like that. But I just, you know, I believe that God is true. I know that it's hard because we live in such a corrupt world, and it's hard when we pray to God and he doesn't always answer us. And I don't know, like I don't have all the answers. I'm just a person sharing their testimony of what they've experienced, and just sharing my perspective. But yeah, like you can take it or you can leave it, but I do believe that God exists and that he wants us to know him. So yeah.
Hmm.
If he wants us to know him, why don't we?
Um, I guess it's just because of like I know it's the fallen nature of man. It's free will. It's that we've been separated somehow to where he won't just speak to us directly like we see in the Bible. I so it's hard to fully say, like, because I'm not God, so I can't really speak for God or why he chooses to sort of deal with us the way that he does. But I'm trusting that what the Bible says is true,
Hmm.
that he does love us, even though he allows bad in this world, and that he wants us to know him, and that it may not always look the way we think it should look, but that there is at least something, whether we can fully understand it or not.
See, I guess my big problem, and I'm going to let you go, Renee, because I don't know that you've got anything else for us, is I care about whether or not things are true. And not only do you not present it in any way for anybody to tell that it's true, you've acknowledged that even you don't have a way to tell that it's true. And so you just kind of go with your gut and treat it as a big mystery. And I find that to both be in conflict with good skeptical principles, good epistemology. I find it to be incredibly dangerous. And I'm wondering, is there any position, any belief that someone couldn't believe based on the method that you're advocating? If people just go with their gut, that can support racism, sexism, homophobia. It can support anti-vaccine positions. It can support the notion that the earth is flat. It can support the notion that you shouldn't have the right to vote. Any of those things, or that, whatever group of people you're in are better than some other group. All of those things can be justified with the sort of, let me go with my gut faith and trusting it all to be a mystery. And to me, that's just too dangerous of a way to live, because those beliefs have consequences for ourselves and others.
I don't disagree, like, that we definitely need to have discernment. Like, we can't just blindly trust or accept anything given to us. Like, if the Bible was teaching, like, to do bad stuff, then obviously that's not something I can, like, just take if I care about being a moral person. But if the Bible is telling me to forgive people that I for sure wouldn't want to forgive, the
Bible might tell you to forgive some. The Bible might tell wow, the audio is just terrible. The Bible might be telling you to forgive people, but it also tells you who to enslave, how to enslave them. It also tells you that women aren't equal to men, and that they shouldn't have property, and that they shouldn't be in positions over men, and they shouldn't have property under certain circumstances or change the inheritance. There's tons of things. The Bible, the God of the Bible, advocates for slaughter, genocide, rape, incest. I mean, and you're going to pick out the turn the other cheek and suggest that because it says includes one good thing, that excuses the rest of it?
No, I don't agree with that,
Renee?
stuff. I would like to ask, so, like,
Renee?
where does it say in the Bible, like, about the property owning?
Exodus 21, Leviticus 25, and Deuteronomy. I've forgotten the verse. But how do you determine which verses of the Bible you're going to pay attention to and which ones you're going to ignore, Renee?
Well, I'm still in the process of reading the Bible. I'm still in the process of studying. So I'm not a Bible scholar. I'm not trying to pretend like I fully understand the Word of God. Like, that's why I would like to know where you've gotten these things so that I can look into it more for myself. But like, one of
I can give you a good resource
that I did look.
I can give you a good resource.
Though,
go ahead.
Was the verse, because I'd heard about that too, was like one of the verses talking about that the Bible is for, or makes it seem like a woman should marry her rapist, something like that. And I that bothered me, and that was something that I looked into more, and I believe, based upon what I researched, that verse was misquoted, like that it is more
no,
so
it wasn't.
like.
No, it wasn't. No, I don't know what you went and researched. I don't know what you went and researched. I don't know what you went and researched, but you epically failed your research, because it explicitly says, Deuteronomy 22, verses 28 and 29, if a man happens to meet a virgin who is not pledged to be married and rapes her, and they are discovered, he shall pay her father 50 shekels of silver, He must marry the young woman, for he has violated her. He can never divorce her as long as he lives. This was because she was her father's property. He had spoiled that property, and he had to marry her.
The verse, like, I'm still researching the Bible, but like the actual terms used, like from what I was like looking into, like I believe weren't the proper terms, and that's what I think was where the confusion sort of happened with that.
You bought into some bullshit. Would you like me to go through it in Hebrew to tell you what the actual terms are? I've got them in Hebrew here with an actual dictionary. You've bought into apologetics nonsense.
Well,
which word wasn't right?
Like, I'm not against discussions like about having, like, trying to understand apologetics more in the Bible, but like I don't want to like try to use this as a way for trying to understand those like things. I feel like I need to do more research on my own before having these kinds of discussions. But I like I don't believe that is probably the way that it's like being presented, because it doesn't make sense to command like men to love their wives, and then in previous verses say that that's okay to do something like that. So I'm still looking into this stuff for myself, but like I can appreciate
you already got it wrong.
I can look into that more.
You looked into verses that you had problems with, and you got the wrong answer. The one that convinces you that it's not as bad. I'd recommend going to skepticsannotatedbible.com. And while not everything there is necessarily accurate or whatever else, but there's a list of problems there. And there are tons and tons of counter apologetics going through all this stuff. Instead of finding out what excuses Bible colleges and apologists can make, look at what it actually says. And by the way, if God's real, why don't you ask God what that passage means, and then get some sort of answer, and then ask him why there's so much disagreement amongst all the other apologists on what that passage means, and why on earth he would allow such confusion in his book and such immorality in his book. I bet you don't get an answer from God.
Like, I definitely will like continue to look into that and just like see, but I'm just offering my perspective like on what I believe to be true. Like,
I got it. And until you have a perspective, on why people should believe it's true, it doesn't matter. You're just stating what you're convinced of, which does us no good. We used to be convinced of that too, and for some of the same reasons.
Okay. Well, like, I thank you for like taking the time to talk with me, and I can, continue to look into it. But I believe what I believe, and I don't think that it necessarily hurts anyone if they're doing it in the way
you're wrong about that too.
Yeah,
you're wrong about that too, and that's why you're going to keep believing, because you've convinced yourself it's
loving
harmless.
God and loving people and forgiving your enemy. I believe those are right, but if it's anything else, like if it's some perversion or twisting of the
You've invented your own God.
You
have invented your own God. You ignore the Bible. You ignore what the Bible says. You pick out a handful of verses and ideas that are consistent with what you want God to be, and you have created a God of your own choosing. And your God is way better than the God of the Bible. It's better than the God I believed in. It's better than most other Christians' gods, but it is not any more real, and it is not any more useful. And by supporting the same book and the same label, you are propping up all of the harmful things and acting as cover for those Christians who are doing what the Bible says and listening to what the Bible say.
But the Bible does say like that the two greatest commandments are to love God, above everything else, and then to love others as we love ourselves, and
If
to
two men have
forgive.
sex, does
And
the
none of
Bible
these
say they
things
should die?
are wrong or evil.
If two
Like
men
to
have sex, does
forgive,
the
to
Bible
love.
say they should die?
What was that?
If two men have sex, does the Bible say they should die?
That was like in the Old Testament. Like
I'm aware of where it
Jesus'
is.
blood and provision were for us to be able to repent of our sins, so that we
No,
can be
ma'am.
forgiven
No,
of
ma'am.
things
You
that
have no,
would have
no,
been
ma'am. You
a
have
death
an
sentence.
you have an embarrassingly flawed understanding of Christianity, Christian doctrine, and the Bible. At no point in the New Testament does anyone reverse the position on homosexuality. And even if they did, now you're saying that God was okay with people presuming that gay people should be killed right up until Jesus came in and said, now you can be forgiven for being gay. Why should anybody need to be forgiven for being gay?
Like everything that I've like read in the Bible, like basically like it's about God, like us doing things the way that God says that they should be done. Like I don't
Okay. I get it. Renee,
agree that
we're going to
anyone should be
stop. We're going to
harmed,
stop. Renee, we're going to
but
stop. You're a cafeteria. Renee, you're a cafeteria Christian who knows next to nothing about it. You read the parts and you kept the parts that you liked. You disregarded the ones that you didn't like and accepted apologetics on it. You are a Christian of convenience. And I applaud you for being better than the religion. I hope you keep asking questions, but we're not going to make any more headway here today.
Okay. Well, I thank you for taking the time for us to have this discussion, and I hope you will all have a good day. Bye.
Thanks.
Yeah,
You
thanks
too.
for calling.
We've got some other Christians lined up, and as much as I'd love to try to keep going with Renee, if we didn't have other theist calls, I would have tried to parse something else out. But when you get to the point where it's like, I just know what I know, and I'm just going to go with it. And even when you point out what the verse actually says, I'm going to believe the people that say it means something else, or that once upon a time it was okay to have slaves. Once upon a time it was okay to kill gay people, but eventually we got better. It's weird.
But
The
many
excuses that
Christians
we'll accept.
many Christians are becoming better than their God. I mean, you probably have seen Kirk Cameron, right? Shifting his position on hell this past week. You have no end of Christians realizing, wait, this is what I'm believing, this is what I'm teaching, and you see the harm, you see the inconsistency, and you adopt a position that the Bible doesn't really allow you to have, but your humanity forces you to have a different position than your God.
Yep. I hadn't actually got to it yet. My ex-wife messaged me to let me know that Kirk Cameron and his son were essentially leaning. His son's definitely an annihilationist, and Kirk's leaning that direction. And I don't have thoughts on it today, but there's other callers. Let's get some other callers here, because in great news, I get to be quiet for a few minutes because Rainwood is calling from New York, pronounce him, and says he has a couple of questions for Brady. So Rainwood, I give you Brady Goodwin.
Yeah, how you doing, Brady? How you doing, Matt?
I'm all right.
All's well.
Okay, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Sound fine.
Okay. Yeah, first I just wanted to say, Matt, I enjoyed your study on the Ecclesiastes. I implore everybody, Christian and atheist, to go watch Matt's channel on the book of Ecclesiastes. I watched it twice. It was really good. But
okay, thank you.
Brady, I have a couple of questions for you, because I know you were an apologist for years and you taught it. If you don't mind, because I think a lot of both atheists and Christians ask these questions, or on the atheist realm, they'll use it to say God doesn't care. On the Christian side, they lose faith. So I wanted to ask you, Brady, when you were teaching apologetics, what did you explain to people when they say, why does God allow children to get cancer, and why does he allow all the wickedness and the floods and all kinds of bad stuff to happen to good people? What was your explanation, Brady?
So you probably have seen the meme or heard the question where a Christian would sort of respond, and they would say, the question is not, why do bad things happen to good people? The question is, why do good things happen to bad people? Because they would say, we're all sinners. None of us is good. And so the fact that anything good happens to us, it's something we don't deserve. There's a pastor, a famous pastor in Philly, who every time I used to ask him, hey, how you doing? His response would be, better than I deserve, right? He would drill that into the heads of his parishioners. I don't deserve to be doing well. And so children getting cancer, or, a tree limb falls and hurts them. Why does God allow bad things to happen to good people? The Christian response that I was used to giving is what Jesus said: there is no one good but God. And so my theodicy is trying to justify God in the face of suffering and evil in the world. My theodicy was, it began with, there are no good people. And so the fact that something bad happens to anyone is par for the course when you're born in sin and shaped in iniquity. And who knows, just like when the disciples asked Jesus, hey, why was this man born blind? Was his parents in sin? Was his mother, his father? Jesus said neither. Or he's recorded as having said, neither of them sinned, not his mother, not his father. This man was born blind so that the power of God could be made manifest. So I would say something to the effect of, if it's not just the sin that is in the world and part of humanity that makes us all deserving of God's worst, but we get his best in Jesus, if it's not that, then it's something that God allowed so that he can glorify himself in some way, either by bringing healing or helping somebody to come along and comfort that person. Or if it's not something that we get to understand here in this life, we'll understand it in the next life, because always, always,
Right.
always vindicate God. Never let the bad stuff that happens never let that besmirch God's name. And so that was my
Right.
fear, my policy back when I was a Christian.
So what I would say is, as a Christian, that wouldn't be a satisfying answer for me. For me, I would want to know, why does God allow, if I was asked, why does God allow 1 billion people tonight to go without food, water, and shelter? I want an explanation for that. Right?
Yeah.
So
Well, as a former Christian, I would agree with you that those aren't good answers that I was just giving you. But go ahead.
Right. So my interpretation would be, my response to a Christian or an atheist that says, why doesn't he step in? Why doesn't he do something to stop world hunger? Why doesn't he do something? Why doesn't he stop the floods? Why doesn't he stop hurricanes? Well, although there's a lot of misconceptions in the Bible, which you guys have brought out, and whenever man gets involved with the Bible or anything, they tend to put their own spin on it and ruin it. But the common theme that I see is that God created everything good, and then man said to God, I can do it my own way better. And there was a challenge that was made at that very point, where Satan, the devil, said, give them the time. And the only thing that could convince anybody that the challenge that was put before humankind would be time. You have to let time go by. Now, man can solve world hunger in a couple of days, but for political reasons, we don't do it. So that's man deciding what's good for and bad for himself, right?
Mm-hmm. So your answer to the question of why there's evil or suffering in the world is God is
intervene. To ask God to intervene. I'm sorry. To ask God to intervene would be like spinning the wheel backwards and saying, no, we don't want to decide what's good and bad. That day will come. That day will come. As a Christian, I believe that.
So right now, God is giving us. Right now, God is giving us what we want. Is that what you're saying?
Well,
Man chose to walk
God
away
gave
from
us,
God, and God is
God
giving
gave
mankind
human, God gave humankind their wish. He said, you want to decide what's good and bad for yourself? Go ahead and do it. What's the
but
outcome then? Wars,
what parent wished for
famine.
cancer for their child?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah, what parent wished for cancer for their child? When you say God is giving mankind what they want, who asked for cancer?
Well, mankind didn't ask. They don't like it now. They don't like it now because
They ever?
it's painful. It's a very painful
When
existence
did
for
they
all of us,
ever?
both atheists and
Right, when did,
Christians and any other religion. It's a painful operation that we're going through right now, and we got to be awake to go through it.
right, but we
But it
asked
doesn't
for it, is
mean
what
that
you're
God is.
saying, right? This is what we wanted.
I'm sorry.
What you're saying, though, however painful it is to us now, you're saying we asked for this at some point, right?
As a human race, yes, we did. We asked God to
When
get
was
away.
that? When did
We said we
ask
could do
for it?
better.
When?
Back, and again, I don't believe the whole Bible is 100% true because man has touched it. And whatever man touches, they ruin. They ruin baseball. I'm not going to go
Right.
into that.
I think
But whatever they touch, they tend to ruin.
cover, Rainwood. It seems like you're laying down cover because what you're about to try to say is we asked for it in the Garden of Eden, and then if me or Matt challenges the Garden of Eden story, you just lay down cover to be able to say, well, I don't believe all of it, but at some point something in that story happened, and that's why we're in this situation. That's what you're basically saying.
Well, for instance, as an apologist that you are, and probably very well versed, no one ever talks about what happened to Adam and Eve. They don't say Adam and Eve went to heaven. They don't say they went to hell. Why not?
Because heaven and hell weren't concepts back when that part of the Bible. No, heaven and hell weren't concepts back when that part of the Bible was written. A heaven that humans can go to, or a hell that people inhabit, that comes later in the history and the evolution of religion. That's why you don't hear about an afterlife for Adam and Eve.
Well,
that's why the Bible in the Old Testament, and that's why the Jews describe death as people going to sleep with their ancestors. They don't describe an afterlife. That's a later invention. And so when those stories were, being told, that wasn't a part of it.
Right. But you see, my response would be that they already had perfection. They already had
No, they didn't. They didn't, Rainwood. No, even if I stick with the biblical understanding, Adam and Eve did not have perfection. God did not make things and claim it was perfect. He said it was good. And the mere fact that there was an opportunity for it to fail means it wasn't perfection. However, there's no reason to think any of this story is true anyway. So where are we getting this man asked for this?
The Bible, again, the Bible has a common theme.
I don't care about the Bible's common theme until I care about whether it's true. How do we know it's true? You don't get to come in here and say that, we asked for this, unless you can demonstrate that we asked for this.
Well, let me give you an example regarding Genesis, or ask a question. Better yet, how long would Adam and Eve have lived if they didn't sin?
I don't think there was an Adam and Eve. I definitely don't think they or anybody else lived for 900 plus years. I can't imagine how long they might have lived or not lived, because the entire story, as far as I can tell, is a complete ridiculous fiction. Why don't you ask me how much Superman can lift? And how much more could Superman lift if I hadn't put kryptonite in his underwear? That's what you're asking.
You don't believe in the biblical sense of man getting here. So
yes. And so I'm asking for you to justify your claim.
I justify my claim by they even find science is now excavating, archaeologists are excavating human skeletons that are up to 8 to 10 to 15 feet in length in height.
No, they're not, Rainwood.
People,
No, they're not. No, they're not, Rainwood. You have
so is
bought
that
into
made up?
yes, it's completely made up. You need to go out and do some research, learn some websites like Snopes, go through Rational Wiki, go through countless, look at whatever claim you think you found, like science discovers giants. Type in that exact
Right.
phrase in Google and then type the word debunked afterwards. And that will start your journey into figuring out that, yes, in fact, these are lies. There are fraudulent pictures. There are fictional stories. If we had discovered 15-foot giants, there would be a Nobel Prize for that. And even if we found 15-foot giant humans, what would that prove? It wouldn't prove a single thing about whether or not there's a God.
Well,
it wouldn't prove a single thing about
the Earth was much.
It would prove what?
The Earth was much
What would it prove?
a much different place. At some point, the Earth
It
was
would
a
prove
much
that
different place,
it would
man.
prove that amongst it would have proved that amongst the 99% of all life forms that have gone extinct in the history of the world, there were also some big people. That's what it would prove. We already know the Earth was different and that there were dinosaurs and huge beasts. We know that.
Hasn't
and they went extinct.
Hasn't scientists proved that the longer animals live, the bigger they get? In other words, like alligators.
Yeah, there are
Alligators
some. Yes, there are some animals that are bound only by their container and the length of their life. There are other animals that reach a terminal size and do not continue to grow. Tardigrades live virtually forever, if not forever, and they still stay very, 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 very small.
Okay. Even the human body, the nose, if you look at a picture of your grandmother, right? And you look at her when she was 20 years old. Her nose was smaller, her ears were smaller, her forehead was, everything gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's showing that, to me, it's evidence that it was not supposed to be this way. And things get terribly wrong.
Rainwood, does your penis get bigger?
Don't be silly.
Oh, you just said everything gets bigger, and I went with the first obvious example, because it's not true that everything gets bigger, and it's not true that everything continues to get bigger, and it's not true that people lived for 900 fucking years. That is a statement that requires evidence and should not and cannot reasonably be considered true until that evidence is presented. Do you have evidence that Methuselah lived to be 969 years? No, you don't.
Only the yeah. One last question, if I might. Where did you teach that people went when they died?
It depends on what period of history we were talking about, and we're talking about what were those people's relationship to their creator.
In other words, when Lazarus died, okay, he was dead 4 days in the memorial tomb, right? And when he was resurrected, again, according to Bible scripture, he didn't say, heaven was great, why the hell did you bring me back here where the Romans are looking to kill us? He was just happy to be alive. So that proves he didn't go to heaven. And it also proves that in the book of Ecclesiastes, when it says,
how does it prove he didn't go to heaven?
Of nothing at all, it proves the resurrection. So people have it backwards.
No, Rainwood. Nothing proves the resurrection. But also, when you claim that it proves that he wasn't in heaven, it doesn't prove that at all. Maybe Lazarus went to heaven and he was up there, and while he was up there, God explained to him, hey, we're going to send you back and it's going to be temporary and you won't have to die again, or you will have to die again, or you get back up here. Maybe he understood all of that and that's why he didn't say anything about it. Or maybe none of it fucking happened. How do we tell?
That wouldn't be consistent with the scriptures. It wouldn't be
No,
consistent.
sir.
Like I said, there's a common theme.
No, sir. You don't get to say it's not consistent with the scripture because it doesn't include something that might have happened that wasn't recorded. Is it possible that Lazarus went to heaven and God said, hey, I'm going to send you back for a little while? And Lazarus said, okay. Yes, Lord. Is that possible?
It's possible. But
is it also possible that he
consistent.
said, hey, I'm going to send you back for a little while, but don't talk about heaven? And Lazarus said, yes, Lord. Is that possible?
Or that God wiped his memory so that he couldn't talk about it?
One last thing for Brady.
No. There's no one last thing, Rainwood. You already did your one last thing. And Brady just pointed out that is it also possible that God wiped his memory so that he wouldn't have a memory of that? And Lazarus just said, yes, Lord. And the answer to that is yes. You need to stop making assertions about what's impossible when there are so many obvious, instantly conceivable things that are also possible. You are leaping to conclusions and you are ruling out things without ever looking or considering what other options there are.
When the funeral procession was going on there, and Mary and Martha were there.
Thanks, Rainwood. When I say you don't get one more last thing, I mean you don't get one more last goodbye. When I say you already had your last thing, you don't get to get yet another last thing. I used to get in trouble for this when I was a kid. Every time it was nighttime, I didn't want to go to bed. And my parents would put me to bed and they'd be down there sitting, they'd be, watching or talking about something, or maybe they had company over and they'd be visiting, and I'd come walking down the stairs, in my little pajamas and night pants and all that, and I'd be like, just one more thing, Mama, just one more thing. Yeah. And they'd let me do that like 2 or 3 times, and then it was, you better get upstairs before we wear your ass out. But hey, our producer has we've got some more Theist callers we're going to get to. So Christ and Tom, both of you hang on the line there. We'll be to you really quickly. But our producer's got a bunch of announcements that we've got to get to, including, I think maybe some information about this week's LineCon online. So Arden, beautiful, wonderful, talented, brilliant person.
Hello.
Tell us what's going on.
Hey, everyone. So this week we've got another LineCon coming up. Also, it looks like my levels are low on the microphone. Am I quiet to you guys? No.
All right, to me.
All right. All right. So this week we have another LineCon coming up this Saturday, December 13th at 3 p.m. Central Time. It's going to be featuring Matt Dillahunty right here, doing the part 2 to his logical fallacies lecture he did a few months ago. Javon Bradley will be doing Just Ask Questions. That is not just asking questions like JAQ. That is Just Ask Questions. And Alyssa Lube will be doing a talk on She Comes First. And by the way, this is the free LineCon that you guys earn from your amazing donations for our Secular Student Alliance fundraiser a few months ago. The way you get access to this is by going to our Patreon, patreon.com/calltheline. You don't have to pay a cent, but you do have to have a Patreon account to access it. So it's going to be through our Patreon still at patreon.com/calltheline, but you don't have to have a paid subscription to access this month. So you can, as long as you are a free member on our Patreon, you will get the link for this talk. So go ahead and go over to our patreon.com/calltheline right now. And see us this Saturday. Be a part of the conversation. Ask us questions. We would love to see you there.
I think I'm going to change my topic. I know you already put this together and everything else, but I was thinking about the sort of rebuttal video that I'm going to do for what Eric Hernandez said when talking to Brady. It's a little bit about fallacies, and it gets through a structured thing, and I think it would fit in the time frame really well. So what I'm probably going to do is kill 2 birds with 1 stone and do that as my video, but give it to the NanoCon, or not the NanoCon, the LineCon online patrons first. We'll see. I got to talk to Jimmy. All right. And as a reminder, when we're done with all the calls, we're going to be reading out all your super chats that come in over, I don't know, if it's $5, $10, whatever it is. We'll be reading those out. So get your questions in. I know we've had really good calls tonight. We've had theist calls. We got a couple more we're going to get to, and that means that Brady and I didn't really get to visit as much about, his process of teaching apologetics, what he thought about it then, what changed, and how. And so if you have questions like that, get them in super chats, and we'll take it then. But here we go with Christ. Christ is calling in Pronzerhium from New Mexico and says, all boundaries are symmetric, which means the universe is a personal God. Hey, Christ, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing surprisingly well given my life situation. So, yeah.
Okay.
Is your life situation... Is your life situation dire?
No, not yet.
Are you calling just to troll me again, or do you actually have something this time?
I've never called to troll you. Sorry, I'm holding up speaking because I don't want to talk over you. I'm just trying to talk, actually, just kind of casually to not fight or anything.
I thought this didn't. In fact, how did this end? How did this end the last time you and I talked?
I think I probably hung up on you. Hung up on you.
Okay, cool. So what is it you're trying to make a case for today?
So basically, like from the quantum perspective, or even like just a biological perspective, or like just a geometric perspective, like all boundaries are symmetrical. So you can imagine that the shape of the cup.
That's not true.
Hmm?
That's not true. That's not true. You included geometry, and scalene triangles aren't symmetrical by definition. So your first premise is already flawed, demonstrably false.
No,
and that means every argument derived from that is not reliable.
I said the boundary. So like the lines of a triangle are symmetric with the external.
No, they're not. No, they're not. No, they're not. A scalene triangle is not. No, they're not. A scalene triangle is not symmetrical by definition.
I'm not saying like folding over a triangle like a shape on a paper. I'm saying like you take out each individual line and say what's in the external, what's in the internal of the barrier. The information on the barrier is the same. And like I'm saying, I'm bringing up lines because
a line has no width. Stop talking. A line has no width. There are no sides to the line. It is an abstract concept, and so are scalene triangles. And you said in geometry, by definition, there are things that are asymmetrical. Meanwhile, out in the physical reality, there are also things that are not symmetrical within fluid dynamics and things like that. I'm saying that your initial premise, all boundaries are symmetric, is not true and isn't relevant to whether or not a universe is personal or not. So what else have you got?
Well, you said, yeah, that is true that a line has no width. And that's why I actually started off by talking about quantum mechanics, because I am talking.
Okay. We're not doing this today, Christ. I guarantee you. We're either going to have a proper conversation where you're going to make an argument and we're going to discuss that argument, or you will go away. Because you didn't start off talking about quantum mechanics. You're just changing the topic when your first premise was rebutted. So I'm going to take you off mute. I seem to recall we had to do this a lot last time too. I'm going to take you off mute. We're going to start completely over. We're going to forget that you said all boundaries are symmetric. We're going to forget that you tried to derail or rerail to quantum mechanics. All I want to know first is, what is the position you would like to defend as briefly as possible?
I'm sorry, I didn't even realize I was muted, so I hope this isn't an issue.
Of course you didn't.
So when I'm talking about quantum mechanics is not about...
Okay, I'm going to mute you again. Just for clarity, you're muted right now. Nobody can hear you. And nobody will hear you until you figure out that I'm not remotely kidding and that this is, in fact, your last chance for today. Because while I don't remember and hang on to every one of the calls, there are people who do remember these calls. So when I tell you that you have worn out every bit of gratitude or charitable listening or every bit of warranted patience in the many times that you've called, the 15 times that you've called the show, know that it's true. I magnanimously said we're going to forget everything that you'd said, and that the only thing I needed you to tell me is, first, what position you want to defend. I'm going to unmute you in a moment, and you need to say, I'd like to defend, and then state the position you'd like to defend as succinctly as possible so that we may then begin having a discussion. If any other words escape your lips, if any distractions, if any, that's why I want to talk about quantum mechanics. It needs to be, I'd like to defend this position and then express it, or this is the position I'd like to defend and then express it. I shouldn't be having to teach people how to have basic conversations. So I'm going to forget everything. I've said it now multiple times while you're on mute. If you didn't hear it, it's because you were talking while you're on mute. So I'm going to unmute you. All you got to do is, the position I'd like to defend is, and boom, that state the position as succinctly and usefully as possible. Here we go. I'm unmuting you.
Quantum mechanics is fundamentally about boundaries.
This is good comic relief, I tell you that much.
That
means he was talking the entire time. Wait, do you think he was talking the entire time, or do you think as soon as you unmuted, he just came right back in with quantum mechanics? Is basically,
yeah. I think he, when I unmuted, he intentionally refused to do the thing figured he'd just get in one more statement. This is absolutely, here's what I mean. I have no idea if that caller who goes by Christ, I have no idea if they're a believer or not. They claim they're a theist, and that gets them to the top of the queue. I have no idea if, in fact, they're a theist, what type of theist they might be. And if they're an atheist, I have no idea what kind of atheist or what their views are on any different things. All I know is, evidently, I've banned them before. I've hung up on them before. And we never get anywhere. And he used to call in under a different name. And here's the thing. When he does that, he's being rude to the theists who are on hold, and we have one. He's being rude to the theists he's falsely representing. He's being rude to the entire audience who would like to hear a conversation. He's being rude to you and I, who are here to try to engage honestly. And yet he's still just absolutely obsessed. Like, ooh, it's Wednesday. I can call in and do this. I don't know what he gets out of it.
15 times.
I get a few more clicks because I get to keep pointing out that we don't get enough sincere theist calls to keep the lines full to avoid people like Christ getting through. We've only got we've got one caller right now who's a theist, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. If there are other theists out there, if there are apologists out there that want to explain what's going on with apologetics, by all means, call in. But for now, we're going to take Tom in Oklahoma. Pronouns are he, him. Tom has a question about universal truths like the laws of logic. Welcome, Tom. You're on with Brady and Matt.
Good evening, Brady, and also Matt.
What's happening, Tom?
Hi.
So, go ahead.
No, I just said hi.
Oh, okay. Hi. Good. Thanks for having my call. So I just wanted to maybe ask you guys a few questions. I mean, like the basic argument is that axioms require God, and I do think that is a foundational approach of apologetics. Is that what you guys have come across too? Have you guys face that often or not?
Yeah, it's the presuppositionalist position. I don't
Presup,
know. I
okay.
haven't. Yeah, so the position is essentially a statement that one must presuppose a God as a foundation for morality, or as a foundation for logic, or as a foundation for anything that philosophy doesn't have a way to currently fully explain, and maybe forever blocked from explaining. Theists want to stick their God in there, so they just assert that there needs to be a foundation without demonstrating that there needs to be or could be a foundation. And then they assert that their God in particular, some God generally, but eventually their God in particular, is the necessary solution to the problem that they haven't shown is real or that could be solved. See, the laws of logic, things like identity, non-contradiction, and excluded middle, they're presuppositions. And it's uncomfortable to have to presuppose them. But the problem is that if we tried to show that they were false, we would have to assume they were true. We would be stuck essentially in a paradoxical state where we're relying on the law of non-contradiction and how you can't violate it. But how do you know you can't violate it? Well, you had to assume it. So we're just stuck. And that's an uncomfortable position for people to be in. And so theists, recognizing that philosophers, that logicians and epistemologists are honest in pointing out that, hey, we can get back to this presupposition, but we cannot, go behind that. Just like when you look at science, when you look at the origin of the universe, we can investigate mathematically back to one Planck time distance from what appears to be the origin of the expansion, but we can't go further. So everywhere there's a gap, they'd like to stick their God. And the biggest gap is right at the foundation of logic.
Right. And I would agree with you, Matt, to an extent. And I think there's some advanced apologetics out there, maybe like Matt Slick, but I think you and him had a debate on
that. I'm so sorry, because Matt Slick and I have debated a couple of times, and Matt doesn't have an advanced position. He's putting forth exactly what I just rebutted. There is no advanced position there is no advanced position in presuppositionalism. You have to presuppose a God because you can't demonstrate one. So you presuppose one which is unfalsifiable, that you assert is necessary to solve a problem that you can't show is real or that can have a solution. Why isn't it just the case that the laws of logic are essentially just brute facts that don't need a foundation?
Well, I would argue that the ontology of these axioms, like logic, math, like that would require a mind, and and also I could even argue the triune God.
I would argue
the
they don't
too.
have an ontology. These are abstractions, but that's our description. It's our attempt to describe that something must be what it is. Why isn't so? The case that X is X could just be a brute fact that could not be any other way, but our conception of it, our law of identity, that is an abstraction that we created to describe this brute fact.
Right, and I wouldn't even disagree, but what are they descriptive of?
Brady's got something.
I was going to posit on top of what Matt is saying, like, how do we know that the laws of logic are not simply the confines of our Constitution? What if the laws of logic are simply our limits?
Well, we do. Here's how I would argue that they are descriptive. Go ahead.
No,
okay, so I was just going to say that they are descriptive, but they cannot be anything natural because the universe obeys them physically. Basically, gravity, everything that follows with the natural
they're
laws.
Not natural. They're abstractions.
The laws of logic.
You just said they can't be natural. They're not natural. You said they can't be natural, but they're not natural. They're abstracts.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. I guess the argument is that the non-God worldview would be insufficient in trying to ground those or substantiate those laws.
Where's the demonstration that they need grounding or substantiating and aren't merely just true?
Well, the fact, if you're going to argue that they're brute facts, and they become contingent facts. If they're contingent, then therefore they can't be necessary. And therefore
no. Sorry. Brute facts. I mean, literally, the definition of a brute fact is that it's non-contingent. But in any case, I don't have to argue that they are brute facts. You, if you're asserting that they require a mind, have to show that they are not brute facts, and you haven't done that, and neither has anybody else.
Well, I could walk you through that. So
congratulations, you will get an amazing prize. You will earn an amazing prize that nobody in the history of the world has earned. So how do you demonstrate that X equals X is not merely a brute fact?
So the fact that they're true in all worlds. See, brute facts cannot be true in all worlds or all possible worlds. So that's automatically off the table. Brute facts are eliminated. So, and this is what I'm saying, like they're concepts, they're defined as concepts, they're conceptual. So rocks don't logic, clouds don't logic.
The concept, you're confusing the map for the place. The concept, the description, the language is separate from the fact. The fact of X equals X is the thing that we're describing when we say law of identity.
Right. Okay, could you kind of unpack that? Because I'm missing your point there. I'm sorry about that, man. Maybe you can explain a little more closer or more in depth than that.
Are you watching the show right now?
I'm on my phone. I could watch it if you want. Yeah, I could turn it on.
No, don't. God, why can't you ever just answer yes or no?
No, I'm not. No.
You're going to be terrible when you get on the stand and they start questioning you. If you were watching the show, I would ask, "Are you looking at me?" And you might be tempted to say yes, but you're not. You're looking at an image representation of me.
Right.
There's a difference between the fact that something is what it is. That is a fact. X equals X. But the language X equals X is a description, a linguistic description of that fact. Okay?
Right.
You have to demonstrate that the fact is not just merely true. And by the way, I would argue, I'm going to have to look into this because I do not agree that brute facts aren't true in all possible worlds or can't be true in all possible worlds. But I don't get into modal logic because I find flaw with S5. But in any case, it wouldn't matter whether it needed to be true in all possible worlds. It's true in this world. And this is the only world that we end up living in. But at the end of the day, these are our descriptions of truths. If somebody wants to claim there has to be a reason why something is what it is, they need to demonstrate that. And when you presuppose a God as an explanation for why something is the way it is, that's already a mistake. If you assert that the God is a necessary explanation for why something is the way it is, you would also need to demonstrate that. So we haven't even demonstrated that there is any reason or needs to be any reason other than that it's true. And yet the theists are supposing a God to solve that.
Yeah, and I would just argue that there's a triunity to the laws of logic. There's three particulars, and within those three particulars are universals. So the only thing that could account for universals itself, plus the three particulars, the threeness and the oneness, could only be the Christian God. So that's basically the foundation of why.
Now you've jumped from your misunderstandings about confusing the map and the place to starting to assert a Trinity. A Trinity is the Trinity within Christendom is a completely irrational, nonsensical proposition that does not make sense. And the fact that you're trying to use this absurdity as the only possible explanation for another manufactured absurdity is absurd.
Have you ever heard of the problem of the one in many?
Yes.
I'm done. I'm done being quizzed by you, Tom. We keep teaching you, and instead of acknowledging the actual objection that I just made or making any attempt to try to redeem it, you just go on to your next question. I'm not interested. Do you have questions maybe for Brady?
Sure. So Brady, how would you account for the threeness and the oneness of logic? Within the three particulars, they are universal. So how would you account for that? Go ahead.
I don't necessarily try to account for it. I think one of the things that I was trying to get at with the question I asked earlier was, I think it's interesting to me that theists and Christian theists want to assert that the laws of logic come from a powerful mind. But what I'm asking is, how do you know that the laws of logic are not the result of a limited mind? The fact that our minds just are not able to get around the laws of identity, the laws of non-contradiction. Why does it have to come from a powerful mind? How do you know it's not coming from our limitations? How have you ruled that out?
And the reason I would answer that because they are prescriptive, and through negation, the process of negation requires free will minds. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
When you say they're prescriptive, are you assuming that they were prescripted and therefore they must be prescriptive?
No, I'm not assuming that. I gave an answer why they are prescriptive. It's because the negation, the process of negation. Avi Zion, a logician, wrote a whole book on this. Why they are prescriptive and why free agent or conscious agents are subject to these, and why they are prescriptive. So I answered it because the process of negation entails that.
Earlier, you correctly said they were descriptive, and now you're saying they're prescriptive. What do you think prescriptive means? They're both. Okay, Tom, we are done. You do not understand what descriptive or prescriptive means.
Don't be a pussy, man. Come on, man. And also, why don't we...
Okay, I'm going to mute you just for a second. I'm going to mute you just for a second. I am going to bring you back, Tom, even though Arden is probably saying why. I am going to bring you back to talk. On this particular call, you called in to ask, oh, you ran away. I thought you said, don't be a pussy. I mean, first of all, there's a great quote. I'm going to look it up because I love it so much. This wasn't just Betty White responding to the "don't be a pussy" thing. She said, "Why do people say grow some balls? Balls are weak and sensitive. If you want to be tough, grow a vagina. Those things can take a pounding." I love Betty White so much. Here's the thing. I'm sorry that you had to run off after telling me not to be a pussy, and after I explicitly said I'd be bringing you back on to talk. I was genuinely interested in trying to figure out exactly what's going on here. You've called in many times. We've had discussions. They don't tend to go well. And when you get exposed for asserting things that are true, asserting things that are contradictory, and asserting competing or contradictory things as both true, when you get exposed as showing that you don't understand very basic concepts, and then now you're trying to use the Trinity as a justification for something that you think is roughly analogous to a Trinity. And you know what? There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with threes. Like, for example, why is it that a stool needs 3 legs to stand upright? It won't do it with 2. It can do it with 4, 5, 6, 7, but you need 3. 3 is the minimum to get a stable base. 3 is the foundation of triangles, and from triangles you can build polygons, all of them. 3, I've got a head, a torso, and a lower body. I have 3 joints in my fingers. I have a hand, a lower arm, and an upper arm. You can divide things into 3, and you can do it really easily. It turns out there's some good reasons for it with regards to mathematics and efficiency. You could also just divide things into two. I got 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 2 ears, 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 thumbs, 2 pinkies, 2 testicles. So, unless you're Lance, but anyway, all of these things are great points for discussion of why are things like this? That's a good question. But if you're going to say, why are these things alike, when really one of them is a matter of your perception and one of them is an absurd proposition that doesn't make any sense, that someone is simultaneously Father, Son, and Holy Ghost in the same way, at the same time, and yet are separate and together at the same time. This is why you think something can be descriptive and prescriptive. And yet all we did was interrupt to point out this brand new absurdity. And you instantly lost your shit. Like, instantly. Don't be a pussy, let's debate. And then you ran away. And then you ran away. Right. I tend to prefer not to use sexist or gendered kind of insults, pussy, dick, whatever, things like that. There's also a lot of other insults that I just won't use. And I'm trying to cut back on just insults in general. It's a nice thing. But after having done this for 20 years, getting Tom to call in and trying to engage in a good faith conversation to point out, hey, first of all, I already did some research while Brady was talking. Whether or not brute facts exist in all possible worlds is a hotly debated philosophical position, at least under the initial research I found, which is why I was like, that doesn't sound right to me. If anything, I would argue that there's a stronger case to be made that brute facts come in 2 forms. One are potentially universals and one are local. So like the way physics operates in our universe might be a brute fact, and it might operate differently in some other universe. But I doubt that logic would or could. It's one of the reasons why we tried to figure out what sort of message to potentially send to life out in the universe. We didn't send anything in any really human language. I mean, we sent songs and stuff up, but we went with mathematics. We went with something that we presume would be universal. Now, the biggest problem, of course, is that we use base 10 because how many fingers have I got?
10 fingers.
It's one of the reasons, but we don't even completely use base 10 for anything. So we got all these different bases. So what's the minimum we can get down to? Binary and geometry. The mathematics of geometry are why Tom and I don't have to have a discussion, Christ and I don't have to have a discussion about whether or not scaling triangles have symmetry. They don't. Oh, but I don't mean scaling triangles. I just mean geometry in general. Oh, I'm sorry. Something can't have a property as a whole if it's if sub-elements don't have that property. I mean, this is the way you show. Even if you were right, your argument doesn't show it. So go get a better argument. And that brings me to the question. We're going to go to super chat. Oh, we got a call.
Uh-oh.
I was waiting to see. I didn't see a note about lines being closed, but somebody's calling. So let's see. I'm going to jump the gun. Well, I was going to jump the gun and put them through.
Hello?
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 We hear you.
We can hear you.
Me?
Who is this?
Okay, this is Robin. I'm an atheist in Kentucky.
Hey, Robin, how are you? You got through.
Yes, I did. I was talking to the call screener. I was calling to.
That's why I broke it. I broke the whole call system. I'm so sorry. Nobody was answering me.
Yeah. You got me all messed up. I'm like, oh.
Whoops.
Oh,
I think they just I think they just hang out. Robin, go ahead and whoops. Now I just put the call screener live. Okay. There are a couple calls. Wow, this is amazing. I wasn't getting any response to what was going on, so I thought we were done that part. Anyway, let me finish what I was thinking. While we're waiting for those calls to queue up, let's get to the question that I wanted to ask you a couple hours ago. And that is,
Okay.
when you were teaching apologetics, how did you view that? Was it a requirement, a calling, a strategy, a matter of fact?
Well, it's weird because I graduated seminary, Westminster Theological Seminary, in 2015, and I started teaching apologetics in 2016. But my doubts had began in 2014. So when I was teaching apologetics, I was grasping at straws trying to save my own faith while I was in the classroom. And so when I was teaching students, I was I was praying to a God that I wasn't sure was there, asking the God to not let students ask me certain questions because I wouldn't be able to give a full-throated answer because I was losing my faith.
How often did that work?
I have no idea. I taught every Thursday for about 3 years at a Christian college here in Philly. But I blended presuppositional apologetics with classical apologetics, the evidential form. I don't know. I think I just was winging it because I really wanted to prepare the students to defend the faith, hoping that someone in the class would do something to reel me back in. Like there were times where students would ask a question. I'm like, oh, that's a good question. I need to go get a better answer for that because the answer the school wants me to give you, I already know how to debunk that. And I don't want to give it to you, but that's what I'm being paid to do. So it was a weird time in my life to be teaching apologetics while I'm deconverting.
I bet. I mean, to be fair, I used to joke that when I got involved in doing all this, it was, penance for everybody that I potentially led the other direction, even though I wasn't Catholic and I don't believe in penance in that sense.
Yeah.
But there was a part of me when I first started arguing this stuff, and I got to the point where I knew I didn't believe. But like I said, I had a roommate that was an atheist, and I had family members who were missionaries. And I was sitting there going, I need to be the type of Christian that can help my godless heathen roommate come to Christ. And as that began to fail, it became, hang on, I've made a mistake. I must have missed something. Perhaps I've let my sin get in the way. Perhaps, that one time 7 years ago when I said, please God, help me pass this test and I'll worship you forever. And I passed the test and then I didn't. Maybe God's punished me for that, whatever. And it's, I went through all of that. And it's like, I had to engage, and now 20 years plus later, I have to keep engaging. And it's, if I'm wrong, I need to know. It's what could be more important than finding out that you're wrong about your eternal disposition and how and what,
Yeah. So to your question about are we immune to apologetics, one of the things I do on my channel is I have this series called Conversations with Christians. And a lot of times I do a lot of listening. And my listening is twofold. One, I'm looking at who I used to be as the Christian is trying to defend the Christian faith. Like, wow, I was that bought in. But at the same time, I'm listening because maybe you're going to say something that I haven't heard yet. I don't want to be immune to truth. But if what you're saying is not true, I was going to say, I want to be immune to bullshit. Like, you know what I mean? I don't want to be immune to truth, but I want to be immune to bullshit. And so I'm trying to split that hair every time I get online.
It's like what people have asked me before. They're like, you've done this for 20 years. Why do you keep doing it? Haven't you already said everything? Haven't you already heard everything? I don't know. I'm waiting to hear something new. I'm waiting to hear some better evidence. I'm waiting to hear something novel. But the fact that I've given those answers, the fact that the world hasn't changed enough means that I haven't found the right way to say it yet to really impact more. So I'm looking for newer, better ways, more different ways to say it. And it may be that every single person needs to hear it a slightly different way at a slightly different time for them to go, wow, oh yeah, that is what the book says. And why hasn't God been answering me? I'm sitting here saying, Lord, I would like to do what I'm supposed to do. I would like to be here. I would like to serve as a conduit for the Holy Spirit in order to guide people directly to Christ, let them see their sin so that they do not spend forever tormented or in annihilation or whatever else. I'd love to be able to do that. And then just crickets.
Yeah.
And you have to ask yourself, why is that? Am I not good enough to help God out? If I'm not good enough to help God out, why does God deserve so much of my time if I'm not worth any of his? Oh, but he died for you. He gave up a fucking weekend, if the story's true, and went on to be God. Hell, I'll do that right now. You can torture me, make me feel the worst pain ever, as long as it guarantees that it will end hunger and poverty on the planet. You don't even got to bring me back. You definitely don't got to make me God for me to say that's a deal. It's weird. But we got some calls, so let's see how we're doing. Although those are atheist calls. But we got Robin back. So, Robin, thank you for calling back. What's going on?
Okay, I know how fond you are of Andrew Seidel. So I'm going to shield for him a little bit. He's going to be in Nashville tomorrow night at the Glendale Baptist Church doing a speech on the tip of the sword, Christian nationalism, with Monty Mater, and it's from 7 to 9:30. It's put on by Sunday Assembly, the Humanist of Middle Tennessee, and Secular Rising U.S. And so it's at the Glendale Baptist Church in Nashville, Tennessee. So if anybody wants to come, you can sign up for it on like Andrew's Facebook page or probably his website, I guess, too.
I'm normally reluctant to allow people to advertise on the shows, but you picked one of about 3 topics that I would not remotely stop you from advertising.
I know you pretty well, Matt. Like I've watched you long enough, I know.
Yep. If Andrew's doing something, people need to pay attention. And if there's, and I love, by the way, I will be in Nashville a couple times over the next year or two.
Oh, nice.
For events and stuff. At least that's my plan. But I love it in Nashville. And, if we drive up there, I am always going to take time to stop at the Loveless Cafe, the best restaurant on the planet. And I like to hang out with my friends in Nashville. And so if there's an opportunity for people in the Nashville area to go see Andrew talk about Christian nationalism and its impact and what's going on, then definitely get a chance to go do that.
Yeah, I thought you'd be approve of that. So I'll be there. I'll
very much do.
Looking to see everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Robin. We appreciate you sharing that information. We're going to get on to a theist caller, Brian. He's calling from Hawaii. He wants to talk about conscious realism. Hey, Brian, what's that?
Matt. Conscious realism. So I had a conversation with, forget their names, Justin and Aaron, I think, about this a couple months ago. And I'm just calling back to discuss it. And I think that, it is a good, what's the word I'm looking for? I think it's a good perspective to hold, right? Like you've been talking on this show, right, about if there is a God or there is something that goes on after life, you would want to know. And I think you're being sincere about that. I don't think you're trolling anyone. I think you're sincere. You were a Christian and then you became an atheist, right? So for me, I was a Christian and I became an atheist, and now I'm back to theist again. So I've done the circle.
What
I guess
evidence? What evidence? Well, I'm unimpressed by people who say they used to be an atheist, now they're theist, because my atheism is largely irrelevant. It's the skepticism and the humanism that matter. So, were you convinced by an evidence-based argument that should convince a skeptic?
Yeah, conscious realism. So the idea that the entire universe is a simulation of
conscious realism
filled with conscious agents.
I'm Brian. I asked if you were wow, I don't know what's going on with your mic. It's like you're blowing on it or huffing and puffing or something, but I'm going to have to mute you but here. I'm going to mute you. I'll bring you back in just a second. It's terrible audio. I asked if you were convinced by an evidence-based argument that should convince a skeptic. Conscious realism is a speculative proposition that the foundation of reality isn't matter and energy, it isn't space-time, that the foundation of reality is consciousness. I'm going to unmute you. Do you think that's a fair assessment of what... It's incorrect or correct?
That is correct. You are correct. That is the argument.
Then my position as a skeptic is that were not convinced by an evidence-based argument. You were convinced by a speculative, unproven, contested proposition that should not convince anyone that it alone is true, let alone that theism is true. Because even if consciousness were the foundational substance, that is separate from whether or not that is theism. And so you have gone from, hey, I don't believe there's a God, to I buy into this speculative proposition about consciousness, and then I'm going to call it God. And I find that to be incompatible with skepticism.
Well, I don't call it God. I call it source. So it is God, but not in
I'm sorry.
God
Brian. You said you're a theist, correct?
Sure. And I use that because there's atheist or theist,
no.
Right? So technically.
Okay, I'm going to mute you. This is never going to go well, Brian. When you called in, you said you're a theist. A theist, by definition, is someone who believes there's a God. I don't care what you qualify your God as, but if we went through all this with conscious realism, and you say that conscious realism convinced you of theism, then that means that conscious realism convinced you there is a God. And then as soon as I said that, in a sort of simple, colloquial, here's the natural flow of conversation, you're immediately like, no. I can't put up with that. If you're going to expect me to sit here and listen as charitably as possible till you misrepresent skepticism and evidence and everything, you can't just start denying that what you're doing is calling that conscious foundation God. All right, so here's your chance, Brian. I'm going to unmute you. Give me the characteristics of the God you're advocating for.
So this God has 64 attributes that it portrays throughout all manifested beings. And so this God would be, and I think you're right. I am a theist, so I will cede to you that I was being illogical. So yes, I am a theist. This God is basically it is like you are not it, but it is you, right? So it goes on forever, but it's not it is all conscious agent, so it's omnipresent in the sense that it's everywhere where consciousness is.
Brian, I asked you to give me the attributes of your God, and you said it had 64 attributes. Do you have a place where we can read these and that they are portrayed through all manifested beings?
GeneKeys.com.
I'm sorry. I'm not asking you to advertise your website, which I know is what you want. And I'm not going to tell you to get back on your meds, because that's rude. But when you say stuff like, you are not it, but it is you, that is as absurd as the Trinity. That is as absurd as someone saying something is both is what it is and isn't what it is. You're engaged in a sort of poetic, wasteful, useless sophistry where you're pretending at a God that none of us should care about or believe in, and acknowledging that you're believing in it for irrational reasons. And so for that reason, we're going to move on. If you come up with
I just typed in 64 attributes.
Yeah.
I just typed in 64 attributes and it came up the 64 attributes of Lord Krishna. I wonder if he was borrowing something from Hinduism, or the 64 qualities of Buddha. Like, why 64 and how does he know that? I would have liked to know where he was getting that from.
It's I was going to get there, and then he decided that, oh yeah, that's where you instead see people need to learn to answer the question. When I say, do you have a website? That's a yes or no question. And then we can decide, do we want to publish that website?
Right.
But at the end of the day, if you call in and you're like, oh, I'm a theist, and conscious realism is the foundation of reality. Well, conscious realism hasn't been demonstrated. I actually find it kind of absurd, because we have yet to experience any consciousness or anything absent the material world. We have no evidence for, or experience with, or detection of anything beyond space-time. And so when somebody wants to say, it's not space-time or matter or energy that is the foundation of reality, it's consciousness. Well, you can continue going smaller. You can go, it's molecules, it's atoms, it's quarks, it's, protons, electrons, quarks, and then strings, and, whatever else. And you can do that and say, the foundation of this is this. But you don't get to take a high level thing like consciousness that has only been observed as a product of a mind, and as a matter of fact is a label for something that is clearly a product of mind that we do not fully understand, and then say, that's the thing that actually serves as a foundation for reality. Well, when you get around to proving it, then I'll be interested in it. And then we can have a discussion about how this in any way demonstrates a God. Because even if consciousness were a foundation, it doesn't necessarily mean a lone consciousness or a super consciousness or a deific, a divine consciousness, not deific. None of that. And I'd love to know, how did you determine that this God has 64 attributes and only 64 attributes? I'm pretty sure I have way more than 64 attributes, because categorization is what we're talking about. And categorization can be arbitrarily divided. There are attributes of my left eye that are different from attributes of my right eye. There are attributes of the rods and cones in my eye that are different between each. I can find differences, and all of those are individual attributes. So it is completely this arbitrary, we're going to say it's 64 because then we can do some math. Guarantee you there's some math coming up. There's some Kabbalah level. And you're probably right that it could come from Krishna stuff. All right. We got somebody calling in. James is calling from Oklahoma, wants to talk to you about your communication with Eric and clarifying views on solid systems. So James, you're on with Brady.
What's up, dude?
What's up, James? What's going on?
Hey, man. Sorry, I didn't know if this would be interesting to add to the conversation. I'm actually not in Oklahoma anymore. I'm in Oregon, but that's all right. I just wanted to get some, I thought you made a good point about how, even the last caller's reference to a mathematical mind being the basis for the framework. I thought you made a good argument for a being who is in someone else's dream not being actually real, that they're a part of another person's dream. I thought that was a really good framing for the mathematical mind apologetic. I don't think it has foundations in what we experience, though, in Cartesian skepticism. And I wonder how you kind of justify that.
Yeah, for anybody who's lost, when I was talking to Eric Hernandez on Monday, we were talking about objective reality. And because he was so sure in his stance on objective reality, and I was saying that matter of fact, Matt, you commented on one of my posts on Facebook. We were talking about I think it was something to the idea of all knowledge is subjective or something to that effect. And I was basically trying to say that our grasp of reality is always going to be subjective. And so just as a way of doing a thought experiment, I was saying to Eric, we don't know whether or not we are in someone's dream.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please continue. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'll wrap up. I was recapping for anybody who doesn't know what you're referring to. My statements to Eric was not saying that I think we are in someone's dream or even that we could be necessarily, but we can't falsify whether or not that's not the case. And so for him to be so sure about objective reality, I just threw that out there to him as a thought experiment to show he can't be as sure as he's trying to be in the conversation that we had. So with that in mind, can you kind of restate what you're getting me to think about now? Yeah, sure. So I was just trying, it was hard for me to follow your approach so you argued from first person, five senses, Cartesian skepticism primarily, which was very good. I thought it was accurate, and I follow the same type of implementation whenever I choose the way I look at discoveries. What I was wondering was, how come you think it's possible for something in a dream to actually be having a first person experience? That's where I got lost. I was like, I don't understand what you're trying. Why would a entity in a dream have a first person experience? We have no correlation to that in reality. And that's why the mathematical mind from, inspiring philosophy fails.
Yeah.
Because
it was a thought experiment that I don't know if it warrants
of another person's imagination or another person's mind, then you don't exist.
Yeah, well, like I said, it was a thought experiment. I don't know if I want to go too deep into it. I don't even know if I could go too deep into it here in this state right now. Not to say that I'm walking away from what I said the other night. I'm just saying.
No, sir, I didn't accuse you of that. I apologize if it came across that way.
No, all good, all good. I don't want to lose people in something that I'm not even wedded to. You know what I mean? So I don't want to spend too much time on that.
The other thing is, I haven't listened to it, and I don't know how many people in the audience. Wow, it's like you can't hear me.
And Matt, I met you back in Claremont when Eric Murphy debated David Woods, and it was a pleasure. And I think you're a great guy.
Thanks.
Have a great night, guys.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Take care. Thanks. Yeah, it's I mean, I'm happy to try to take the call and dig through it, but I mean, I haven't heard the actual exchange, and I don't know how many people in the audience have, but that's a really great opportunity because you can direct them to your channel where they can go watch this discussion with Eric. Since you're going to get more questions about it, you're going to do more discussions with Eric, and I'm going to be doing a response to part of it this weekend, which is fun. Where can they find it?
Yeah. Yep. On Icapod, ICHAPOD. So on YouTube at Icapod. Spoke to Eric Hernandez this week, and we'll be doing a follow-up discussion next week. on my channel, so you can check that out. But yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts on some of it, Matt. Like I said, I was going sort of off script. I didn't realize he was using a transcendental argument in our discussion, which I typically don't interact with because to me it's so convoluted at a certain point. But I was sort of locked in, and so I just started throwing ideas out there that, like I said, I'm not really standing behind some of the things that I said as much as I was just trying to get him off of his square a little bit in that conversation. So yeah, check it out.
Yep. One of the posts was about religion isn't mental illness, but they often go hand in hand, and not because the religion itself is mental illness, but because people, first of all, who isn't mentally ill at this point? I mean, all of us got something going on, but when we're talking about more serious, divorced from reality things, it's not that every religious person is suffering from that, but people who are suffering from those things tend to also more likely fall prey to religious things. Just like our caller from earlier tonight, people looking for comfort, people dealing with sorrow in times of stress, loved ones are in the hospital, loved ones are passing away. There are people who are at their wits' end, and religions often come in and offer, I'm just going to call it hope. I consider it to be false hope. I consider it to be perhaps a needed helping hand that I think could be done better. I think that if religions didn't poison our thoughts about death, we would be able to handle death better. And the religion set up so many expectations that we should know aren't going to come to pass. We know that teaching abstinence only works 100% of the time. Well, I guess Christians would have you believe it didn't work once, but to the extent that abstinence only works, abstinence only education does not work, because we know fundamentally kids are going to have sex. People out of wedlock are going to have sex. I saw a meme to let me get political for just a second. Pete Hegseth, who is a treasonous, traitorous piece of garbage and is the Secretary of War Crimes as far as I'm concerned,
Amen.
went after Mark Kelly for daring to tell troops, you not only don't have to follow illegal orders, but you shouldn't follow illegal orders. Something that Hegseth himself has said. We have video footage of that. Something that all of us were taught in boot camp. And the MAGA folks decided to portray Hegseth as the good guy and Mark Kelly as the bad guy. And the meme that I loved this week probably the most is a picture of Pete Hegseth with his wife and 7 kids. And it says, in a world full of Mark Kellys, be a Pete Hegseth. And somebody replied to win the internet, American hero Mark Kelly has only had one wife. After she was shot in the head, he retired from the Navy and NASA to care for her and help in her recovery. Pete Hegseth's current wife is the woman he got pregnant when he was cheating on his second wife, who was also pregnant. Yes. Let's not pretend that MAGA or Christians or real Christians or fake Christians or whatever have even attempted to corner the market on morality or righteousness or goodness. It is as much of a lie as the weak apologetics that try to discount the Bible's position on slavery, the Bible's position on genocide, or the Bible's position on rape, the Bible's position on countless things. We can't just sit by and let the apologetics go unanswered. And the apologists are, to some extent, giving up on being taken seriously. They've come up with nothing new. They know they're not coming up with anything new. And that's why we're getting so many calls that are like, well, we'll probably never know. I mean, maybe you can't know on this side of death. Well, how do you know there's another side of death? And how do you know whether or not you'll know on that side of death? And how do you know you've made the right decision on this side of death to change the other side? Is there anything you can do? We don't know. But we got some super chats to get to. Huge thank you to our call screener and to our moderators and to the people who called in. But let's dig into some super chats. Dun, dun, dun. Plan box from Misha. We miss you, Arden, and hope the relative is having a peaceful time of it. Good to hear Matt's family members recovering well, too. It's the time of year I feel a bit more kindly toward my own fam.
Matt, are you putting them on the screen? I'm
putting them on the screen. Thank you, Misha. Arden is back home, and her grandparent peacefully passed. And we're all sad, but very happy to have known her. I liked her.
So we got $9.99 from Greg Markowski, 6747. How much of a chance do you think Jasmine Crockett has in her race?
It's too early to say.
Yeah.
What do you got, Brady?
No, I was going to say she was booted out of her district, wasn't she? She's running in a different district now?
No, she's running for senator as opposed to representative.
Gotcha.
She's running for a seat that is currently being contested. John Cornyn is the incumbent. He's being challenged by Ken Paxton. And the Democrats, you had both Jasmine Crockett and Colin Allred were going to be running for that seat. Colin did the right thing and the smart thing, both for the good of everybody in the party, and dropped out and basically endorsed her, in part because, they're both friends. But let's be honest, Jasmine Crockett is a powerhouse, a brilliant, take no prisoners, lawyer-minded badass that the Republicans are terrified of. And the Democrats are banking on Ken Paxton beating out Cornyn in this primary because Paxton's further right. And that gives them a better target. I just saw that Miami flipped their mayoral seat to Democrat for the first time since like 1997 or something. First Democrat and first non-Hispanic in like 18 years. I don't know what her odds are yet. It depends on how bad the economy gets over this next period before we get up to voting, and what comes out of the Epstein files and what happens with the legal cases all over the place, because we have an administration right now that is mostly peopled with former Fox News hosts and wrestling executives and rich family offspring with brainworms. And, or not worms, plural, we only know of the one. Right now, I give her about a 47%. I'm thinking like 47, 53. But we don't yet know who she's up against. We don't know what it's going to be like. And honestly, she needs to stop pussyfooting around with AIPAC and call the genocide a genocide and stop going the wishy-washy path of, well, we're going to give them defensive weapons. Cool. You're giving everybody defensive weapons. How about they get no money until they stop killing people, and then we can go back to, but that's me. When push comes to shove, I'm always going to pick the best candidate, but I am not going to I love her. I hate her position on Israel, but I hate it less than some others. And I won't be supporting her until either that changes or until it becomes inevitable that this is the candidate and this is who we've got to back. Because I'm not a Democrat. I just agree more with them than others on occasion. Thanks, Greg. $10 from Joshua Everett. Good to hear from Brady. I feel like formal apologetics is stagnated. Many young theists are still pointing us to read Strobel or Wallace. I always ask, is that what convinced you? And it never is. That's a great point. It's something we brought up before. With regard to presuppositionalists, nobody, and I'm sure somebody has been, I'm speaking broadly. Nobody became convinced that Jesus Christ is Lord because of a presuppositionalist transcendental argument for logic. You can't get from A to B without a whole bunch of extra stuff. But instead, it is the consistent failure to come up with sound arguments, to come up with reliable evidence, to come up with sufficient evidence for any claim ever in the history of the world about any God or even anything supernatural. It is an admission that they have failed. And so now they need to dig in on the philosophy. This is what they've been doing. This is what I think they're quitting. Dig in on the philosophy to try to do a bait and switch of, if I can get you to believe this absurdity, I can get you to do this atrocity, to paraphrase from Voltaire. And if I can get you to believe that there must be something that started it all, then it's just a hop, skip, and a jump until you're joining Westboro Baptist Church and marching around with homophobic stuff. I think they're moving away from that as well.
I was going to ask on this point, Matt, what do you think? Because, we had a caller who mentioned Lee Strobel tonight. So you got Strobel, you got Wallace. Do you think Wes Huff is bringing anything new?
I'm going to have to bow out because I barely know who Wes Huff is or much about what he's said. So I couldn't assess whether or not it's anything new. But I'll say this.
Okay.
I'd bet one paycheck, sight unseen, that if Wes Huff doesn't have anything significantly new or substantial, or I think everybody would have heard about it. Like, you know, we're at the point now where there needs to be some sort
for the same.
I don't know I'm saying I don't know his stuff. I'm just saying that we reached a point now where if somebody had anything significant, the Templeton Foundation and who knows who else would just be, it'd be, Fox News would be running it, God proven, Yeah.
I don't know if I was still in, if I'd be able to see what's so clear to me now, that he's just the new package for the same old present. Like, I remember one year when my nephews were young, I don't know why, me and my sisters got it in our heads this is before people were filming stuff and putting it online. So I have no idea why we did it. We just did it for fun. But it was Christmas and we had bought them some really nice new things. But we said, hey, won't we just took all their old toys and wrapped them up. We took the time to wrap them up and we gave them to them on Christmas morning just to see what their reaction would be. And they woke up early and they came down and they opened the package and they tore everything off. And you could just see in their faces that they wanted to be thankful because it's like, okay, we understand how this works. I have to be thankful, right? But then one of them just looked up and said, but we already have these. And we couldn't hold in our laughter anymore. We pointed them to the real gifts. But I feel like that's sort of what Wes Huff is. It's like, oh, new wrapping? This must be a new gift. You're going to give us something new to affirm our faith. And then you unwrap it and it's like, oh, wait, it's just textual criticism? Oh, you just debunked Billy Carson? Like that's all this is? And you get on Rogan for that? It's new wrapping for the same gift that we already had.
Well, that's Rogan's bread and butter is let's talk about some wild shit and not challenge anybody. Or Rogan's actually getting worse and is vacillating on his, I don't know, filleting Trump and whatever. But it was like, it reminds me of it's either from, it's an Eddie Murphy bit, either from Raw about these are the same old Ritz crackers. you think you're getting something new all the time, and then as soon as you get married, you're getting the same thing every day. This is the same old Ritz crap, the same old saltines or whatever. And they're rewrapping this like you're talking about. But the thing is, and I'm not familiar at all really with West F. I couldn't pick him out of a lineup. But I'm familiar with some of the other new apologists and the older ones. And it's funny, you're right though. When she called in and was like, I'm looking into Lee Strobel. I'm like, you realize the book that you're reading from Lee Strobel, the first edition of it was written 35 years ago. And that there are entire websites. I'm having trouble remembering my primary one that I go to, but there's a website that has an almost chapter by rebuttal to both Lee Strobel's books and to Josh McDowell's Evidence That Demands a Verdict. And I remember asking Sean McDowell, his son, if the newest version of their book addressed the objections over at that site. And he's like, oh, yeah, we've seen that. We've addressed that. And they offered to send me a new copy of the new edition of New Evidence. And they did. And it does not address the things that they said it addressed. It's not even close. And so now I have yet another copy. I have like 5 versions of the New Evidence. And let me tell you, there's no new evidence. It is the same old things that they've been shoveling for years. With the same fallacies, the same objections. It's like, I don't know how many people have thought, what sort of evidence would be sufficient to prove magic? Like, how do you show I can read people's minds? How am I doing it? If you don't know the method, am I cheating? Is there some technology you don't know about? And this is where you get to Arthur C. Clarke's any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And so how do you demonstrate that the supernatural is even possible, let alone that it exists, let alone that you've identified it? And so that means that the supernatural must be able to interact with the material world in a detectable way. Otherwise, you're claiming to have detected the undetectable. And so detect it. Stop wasting our time on there must be a grounding for logic and fucking detect it. You found God? People, when the caller was like, we need to show them Christ. Cool. How do you do that? Well, you do it by caring. I care. Are you saying that people without Christ can't care? I mean, this is what we went through. And I'm like, they don't think.
Well, that's the issue. It's not just how do you prove magic, because that would be one thing, right? Like if you read somebody's mind right now, I got to prove how Matt did that. But this isn't how do you prove magic. It's how do you prove magic in the past? Because it's not like God is doing these things now. So the challenge is, how do you prove that this magic happened 2,000 years ago? And because you can't, you have to rely on things like, I'm going to show you my kindness, and I'm going to do something in the here and now, because I can't go back to those days. I can't do that. And so God is limited to what the people are limited to. And that's a telltale sign of what's going on.
I don't. Yeah. Let me see. Well, maybe I'll do a magic trick a little later. We'll see. I don't want to get distracted by that. Let's get some more supers going here.
All right. Is this one on me?
I think so.
$10 from Based Airlines. Please have on secular spirit and or apostate Aladdin. They are ex-Muslims, skeptics, and LGBT affirming.
I will make sure that our team of investigators looking for new potential guests are aware that those names should be considered. Right, Arden?
Yes, I am listening. I got your ahem.
Just having some fun. Thanks, Paste. $10 for the atheist mechanic. Hello. I'm still kind of hung up on the, while God answers prayers, if that's the case, then why are hospitals full of cancer patients or other illnesses? God can't do anything. As far as I can tell, there's no reason to think that God can or has or ever will do anything. There are plenty of claims about what God does. You know, I mean, this is what I was trying to get to with our caller earlier tonight. She asked God for a sign, and then God showed her a sign. And the thing we didn't get to is, what was the sign? The sign was, don't give up, Renee. How do you know that sign came from God? Well, I don't, but what are the odds? I don't know. What are the odds? Did you calculate them? And and even if they were really low, how do you determine it's more likely that it came from God than a coincidence? And by the way, the other part of the story, that she was really nice and struggling, and I'm hoping she investigates more, but there were other parts of the story that were problematic. That you were going through a really difficult time, and you asked God to give you a sign that he still cares, and days later, you missed the bus. So are you suggesting God made you wait around for days, and then God made you miss a bus just so you'd see a sign that said, keep going, Renee? I mean, that God's kind of a dick. I would think that God could just say, keep going, Renee, without making you miss a bus and jump through hoops for days. I don't know.
Yeah.
God works in mysterious ways, and mysteriously, it looks like he's not working at all.
All right, 10 Canadian dollars from Jessica Gallagher, 3937. May you both be secularly blessed. Christmas tree. Okay. I receive it, as we used to say as Christians.
$10 from the atheist mechanic. Again, to say we asked for this is extremely gross. No one asked for cancer, Rainwood. F off if you actually do that. I've had repeated issues with Rainwood making just broad assertions. Everybody wants to live, and we asked for this. And it's really, you got to stop making assertions, especially ones that are so easy to debunk, because Rainwood is pretty much on a peer with, Christ asserting that isosceles triangles aren't, scaling triangles have symmetry because the lines have an inside and an outside. It's not what that means, and you know it. $10 from Mirage 3304. Rainwood, I didn't ask to be trans. I didn't ask for a tumor. I didn't ask to need joint surgery. Humanity didn't ask for this stuff. Go fuck yourself. Yeah, to be as terrible as possible.
Yeah.
Rainwood wasn't suggesting necessarily, Rainwood wasn't thinking this through. It's a common notion that this is a fallen world because of us. This is what comes from Genesis, that we were disobedient, and that our disobedience brought sin and death into the world. And prior to that, sin and death didn't have no place in this world, and boom, 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 boom. And so it's also weird that why would the God of perfect justice punish everyone forever for what one person did? That doesn't sound just to me either. And why would God, all-knowing and wise, brilliant beyond measure, create two beings, give them a brain that clearly wasn't ready to reason or stand up against certain things, and allow them to investigate the world with reason and then punish them for using it. Why would God put down innocent individuals and say, if you eat from this tree, you live forever, and if you eat from this tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you will surely die? Don't eat from it. He had to know. Even if he doesn't have perfect foreknowledge, he had to know that. I mean, it doesn't take much. Especially, didn't he also have to know that the serpent, being the most cunning of all God's creatures, was going to do this, or might do this, or had designs against him? I mean, it seems not only is the Old Testament just a comedy of repeated errors, but it's God's bumbling incompetence. I did an entire talk about this in Australia of, why won't you love me? I created all this for you, and it went wrong, but, why won't you love me? I told you to do one thing, and you didn't, so now I'm going to punish everyone forever. It's bizarre.
Yeah. Makes no sense. $49 from Hannah Hodgins, 9516. To Renee, actually. She says, you claim God is truth and love, yet I grew up with an abusive missionary father and had exorcisms done on me. It destroyed me. I forgot who I was. I no longer wanted any part of my life at one point. And guess what? Pure silence from God. Nothing.
Hannah, if you're up for talking about your story at some point, I think I'd be interested in having a conversation, specifically not digging into the personal aspects of abuse or trying to go after your dad, but as someone who had exorcisms done on you and experiencing the harm. I know a few folks that would benefit from hearing about that, and by all means, you can be like, no, I don't ever want to talk about that. But if you have an interest in talking about it, I would be eager to learn more. And huge congratulations on escaping that, but also a huge thank you for your continued incredibly generous support here. $10 from Meg 801. Joseph Smith tried to get ahead of the whole before afterlife memories argument by just saying, oh, there's a heavenly veil, so no one remembers any of that while on earth. Blanket excuse. Hashtag go fuck yourself, Jimmy.
Yeah. $20 from Misha. That's the best I'm going to do with it. Carla's like Renee make me so sad because she's almost there. I didn't get almost there, but okay, almost there, but will likely not get there because as long as she has that blind spot of I accept apologetics because I want an excuse I can consider reasonable. Hope she gets there. Yeah, it seemed like Matt. I was going to say, Matt, I think you properly diagnosed that this was not a person who was reading their Bible. This was not a person who was combing through the faith to figure out, what it actually teaches. I don't know if that person can ever really be considered almost there because they don't even want to look at what's actually there. They don't want to see what's actually there.
Those are people who've been convinced that the bad things in their life, they need comfort, and a religion can provide it. And so they, like Plato, they mold the religion to be what they need. And they see what they need to see to get the comfort that they're looking for. And, I'm not going to beat anybody up for finding coping mechanisms, but this is a show about, hey, can you demonstrate truth? And by the way, for all the people who are struggling out there, for the people who are using religion as a crutch and coming up with coping mechanisms and cherry picking things, I would not only recommend recoveringfromreligion.org, and there's a way that you can go talk to people, counselors. They are not going to try to talk you out of your belief. They are there to talk with you, to help, because we understand there are things like religious trauma syndrome, and we understand there are people struggling and they're getting one message from religion and they need somebody to talk to. And then there's also the Secular Therapy Project at seculartherapy.org. I think it's seculartherapy.org. If not, you can get there from Recovering from Religion as well. And that is a place where you can go to look up therapists that are not going to preach at you or direct you toward religion. They're just going to use science-based, reasonable psychology, medication. When you, if you get down that road, this is, it's really rough. And I stopped predicting, oh, so-and-so's almost there, I don't know, at least 10 years ago. Because early on, you'd get somebody and be like, oh, I think we'll be hearing from them, you know, and they'll be an atheist in 6 months, whatever. And sometimes it happens. Yeah. There have been times when it was right. But it's a bad idea for two reasons. One, that shouldn't be the goal. My goal isn't to make people atheists or even make people give up religions. It is to make people care about the truth and to make them understand or help them understand what methods we should use to get to the truth and how, until we have good reason to think it's true, we should not even pretend or act as if we think it's true. That claims carry a burden that must be met. There's a reason why you're innocent until proven guilty. And I find God innocent of existence until somebody can demonstrate that he's guilty of existing.
Nice.
And a few other things as well. But thank you, Misha.
$10 from
you do it.
Was it Savage? How would you say that? Maybe
Sapphic Hazard.
Sapphic Hazard? Sapphic Hazard, okay. Oh, Sapphic Hazard. All right. As an easy example, a flower pot is a boundary for dirt. The outside of the flower pot is not symmetrical with the inside. What a fucking tool bag. Christ on a pogo stick with a shitty phone.
True. Thanks, Sapphic Hazard. $10 from Hype Yazoo. Weekly reminder that Christ is just John Jackson Grieger who calls in, makes incoherent ramblings, called in with anti-trans garbage, and if memory serves, has been banned twice, unserious caller. This is where in 20 years of doing this, one of my, I guess, coping mechanisms that I use to keep from losing my mind is I don't hang on to calls or caller names unless I've had lots of conversations with the same person. I'm unlikely to remember details. And even if I've had 10 or 15 conversations, I don't hang on to the details. It's just, I know that Christ is a problem. It's been a problem in the past, so I'm on guard for that. But knowing who they are and the other stuff, I just can't be bothered to keep up with all that because it would be way too much baggage to hang on to. And so there are going to be people, and I know you guys are sitting out there going, how the fuck does Matt not remember? This is the dude that said this and dropped the T slur or the R slur or the. I'm genuinely really good at letting things go. There are people I have cut out of my life and I could not tell you why. There are other people I can absolutely tell you and show you screenshots of why. But that's because I didn't necessarily get closure for those. Anyway, thank you, Hybe Yazoo.
$20 from Tuttle. We'll go back or stay here.
No, go ahead.
$20 from Tuttle 332. Could you guys still man the argument that the dispensation of time somehow changes the morality of actions, and or the argument that the sacrifice of Jesus excuses sin? I hear them so often and I've never understood them. I don't even know what the first one means. Can you tackle the first part, Matt?
Yeah. So I view ethics and morality as situational. And so while I would not assert that there was never a situation where I would view slavery as a moral good, I cannot say that there isn't some situation at some place in some time where it would be morally preferable to something else. I have difficulty even imagining what that would look like because it violates foundational principles about individual sovereignty. And so the closest we ever get is this notion that someone could willingly be a slave, except that that is not slavery if you're doing it voluntarily and you leave. And so I don't understand the notion that that was back then. So things were different back then. It was okay back then. I think that is a cop-out. The closest I could come to steel manning that is to say, at some point, there were moral defeaters that we no longer have access to and cannot think of that could have made it morally preferable to another scenario. But I reject the notion that as written, it could ever be viewed as a morally permissible act because it's written in broad terms and general terms. You know, your slaves you shall buy from the heathen that surround you, and you can beat them as long as they don't die within a couple of days. It doesn't say you can beat them on Thursdays if they're male and if they did this. It's too general. You just get to beat them. And I think that in much the same way that there are paradoxes that aren't likely to be solved, and there are brute facts that do not need a justification, there are within situational ethics some things for which there is no likely or even remotely probable situation, only a fanciful, non-existent situation that could ever justify them. That's the best.
Let me ask you to piggyback on that. Does situational ethics deal with better or worse, preferable or less preferable? Or is it a matter of, with situational ethics, this thing is good in this situation or bad in this situation? Because I hear Christians often make a point similar to what you said. If you look at what Israel was doing compared to what, let's say, the ancient Mesopotamians were doing, what Israel was doing was better. It was progress. But isn't morality about good or evil, not better or worse?
I think the best way I can kind of describe it. So let's say I'm sitting right here and my nose is dead center and over here is good and over here is evil. It's one of those things where there's a temptation to say, oh, this act is evil. And then you can say, yeah, but in this particular scenario, this act is less evil. Yes. And if those were the only two options, this one would be the morally preferable act, even though it's still on the evil side of the spectrum. And there's maybe a gray area in between. I don't know how time changes it, but unlike
I think you did
I
a
don't
great
tend
job
to
of
speak in
saying what you
absolutes.
said. I think you did a great job because I would have never put that together, that the dispensation of time, like what was happening in 4000 BC as opposed to what's happening now. If that's what they mean, I think that was a great way to address that. If they mean something in terms of the laws of physics, space-time, how that changes moral actions, I don't even understand that.
The only way that time is relevant is that the only way that time is relevant is that the situation may be different at a different time. And so it's not the time that changes it, it's the situation. It's not like, this is in this particular physical, at T0 is the start of the universe and at T plus 95,000 seconds, this is the moral truth. No, I don't think that's possible. But I don't think that's what they're arguing. I think they're arguing for situational ethics. I think every time they say, oh, that's the way it was in the Old Testament, They just admitted that their ethics are situational, and so is God, because God used to think this, used to think if two guys had sex, they were deserved to be put to death. And now, well, he still thinks that, but the church thinks differently. But anyway.
I could still make the second part to help this person out, but I almost feel like I'd be preaching to do that. I did that my entire Christian life, trying to make people think there was logic to a substitutionary atonement for sin. So there's many ways to do it, but I think one of the ways that one of the ways I do it is just to say, you see this situation in the Old Testament where God is telling Israel to bring sacrifices for different reasons. And one of the reasons that they're sacrificing is for their sins. And the idea of a sacrifice, particularly a scapegoat, is symbolically the priest is placing his hand on the animal that's to be slain, transferring the sins of not just the priest, but the entire people onto that animal. And then that animal, the scapegoat, that animal gets to run away from the camp, carrying the sins of the people. Then there's another animal who gets sacrificed. And some kind of way, you kind of boil those down to the sins of humanity get placed on Jesus, and he becomes the scapegoat in that he bleeds for our sin, and he also goes away from the camp. He goes into hell, or however you want to talk about him descending into the lower regions of the earth. There's ways you can look at different ways you can look at that, but Jesus becomes the one who takes on the sins. They're transferred onto him, and what should happen to the sinners happens to him. It's actually a pretty interesting system of trying to absolve people of guilt. If you can tell them that all your guilt's been placed on this guy, and God's going to do to him what he should do to you, and then you become so thankful, but you've got to admit it. You've got to admit, I deserve that. And once you do that, then there's this righteousness switch. Jesus' righteousness becomes yours. Your sin became his. God treats him like he was you. God treats you like you were him. And there's this switcheroo that happens. I'm not saying that should make sense to you, but that was one of the ways that I used to preach substitutionary atonement when I was a Christian.
I've heard lots and lots of analogies. You aren't strong enough to even carry your own sin, but Jesus is strong enough to carry all sin. If you get one drop of black paint in your bucket of white paint soul, you can never get that back to white paint again on your own. But Jesus is a constantly flowing stream of perfect white paint that no stain can stick to and washes absolutely everything away. And he flows through you and replaces that. It's not that it excuses sin, it's paying the price for it, because all sin has to have the price paid. It's just that Jesus is so perfect, he can pay it for all of us. Now I feel sick. I didn't even do the voice. $10 from Doc Plaramonot, 2747. Free suppers weaponize certainty. Yes. I'm going to be going into this.
Yes.
This weekend.
Help me out.
Because they know they can't survive ambiguity. Correct. It's not confidence. Oh, I think it is. It's existential stage fright in Slick Psy cosplay. I agree that there's an existential stage fright, but it is the confidence they need, which they will pretend to. Which is why you hear things like, I know that I know that I know that I know that Jesus Christ is Lord.
Yeah.
You'll hear stuff like that. That is an expression of confidence that I think gets to your actual point, which is it's a betrayal of a lack of confidence and a lack of ability to show justified confidence. So, yeah.
Yeah, if I could add to that too, when
Doc.
I was on with Eric, one of the things I said I said this several times when talking to Eric, I think we don't know. Like, you're plugging in your God of the gaps. I'm willing to say we don't know. That existential stage fright, I don't have that anymore. Like, the person who goes out on stage and forgets their lines and doesn't know what happens next, you freeze up, as opposed to the person that says, no, I'm going to have to wing it from here. We don't know that. There's no existential stage fright for the atheist who can just say, I don't think we know. $10 from Alayashana Silverbow. Hi. And hi back.
That's perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much, Alishana. $10 from Legon 1212. I was homeschooled, not chill. Can y'all shout of the homeschool recovery Reddit? A lot of children asking for help. Happy holidays. I don't know anything about the homeschool recovery Reddit, so I can't truly shout it out, but I guess you did. So be it. Thank you for your contribution, and I'm glad that you are recovering from the homeschooling.
$9.99 from Juju Penguins. This is payment for the fact that Brady's music helped me to convince my parents to let me listen to more than Stephen Curtis Chapman and Michael W. Smith when I got my first iPod. Well, I'm glad I was able to help, and sorry for hurting at the same time, because it was Christian rap, and I'm not ashamed of the music as much as I'm like Matt said a minute ago. I helped so many people into it that I feel like it's a penance to help people out. But yeah, that's what's up.
Cool. $10 from Nelson Dashner 7758. Can Matt give us a Cliff Note review of Langan's CTMU? Nope. It's been a long time since I paid any attention to Langan. I find him to be an irrational kook. And I just remember that I didn't find any of it compelling or particularly cogent. So I can't give you a Cliff Notes view of it as well. Yep, we'll just stop there.
All right. $9.99 from Hannah Hodgins 9516. Back again, says, yes, I'm interested in having a conversation, Matt. I sincerely appreciate it. I'm not techie, so I would need to know where to reach out. LOL.
Yeah. I guess maybe hit me up on Basic Messenger if you've got it, or you can just send an email to sans.deity@gmail.com. And we'll see if we'll talk and see what we see. But I appreciate that. You didn't have to pay again just to let me know, but I'm grateful that you did. I was, half of my family was Catholic, but they were part of a cult, because Catholicism is a cult. That's what I grew up Southern Baptist Catholic. So they worship, Mary and saints and do all this stuff that's not biblical, and exorcisms and blah, blah, blah. And I was always fascinated by elements of it. And I get asked about exorcism. I get asked about Catholic stuff pretty frequently, and I don't always have a good answer. I have better answers for Catholic stuff than I do for Chris Langan's crap. But exorcism is something I want to know more about, because a lot of people are just like, much like hypnotism. Oh, it's a harmless play along thing. And I'm like, this seems to me to be like psychological torture, and in many cases used instead of getting people the responsible scientific mental health treatment and psychological help and therapy that they might need. How many times has the church taken actual mental aberrations and just diagnosed them as demon possession and tried to exorcise someone or then lock them up? And how many times did the church in particular accuse women of hysterics to the point of this? Yeah, there's a lot. And so when I hear somebody who went through something as potentially devastating as you, I'd like to at least hear the story and maybe do a video about it to say, hey, I don't know how representative this is, but we can talk. sans.deity@gmail.com. That gets to me. Final super chat for today, unless somebody gets another one in, which if somebody gets a $50 one in, I will force Brady to think of a celebrity and prove it. But Green Man Dave says, when they turn the pages of history, when those days have passed long ago, will they read of us with sadness for the seeds that we let grow? Rush, farewell to kings, no kings. I got you that. We did get a new super chat in, but it's not the one for the magic trick. So we got to keep going.
Juju Penguin's back again, $9.99. Thank you so much. Says, don't worry, Brady. I still ended up here in atheism, I guess you're saying. So maybe my parents' fears were correct and I was corrupted by rap. Don't tell that to my former cross movement group members.
That's right. It was all a ruse to lure Christian kids away from Christ. $10 from God's Sinner. Love the show. Brady, you have a great voice. Going to bed now so I can hopefully not miss another TACIS again. From Cara Kell. Thank you so much, Cara, and everybody else for all the super chats coming in. I tell you what, we'll save our magic thing for another time. Brady, where do people need to go to find you, and when can we get you back?
Ichapod, ICHAPOD on YouTube, or check me out on Facebook, Brady Fanatic, PHANOTIK, Goodwin on Facebook. I'm always on Facebook causing trouble, asking my former Christian community to think through what they still believe. And yo, Matt, anytime, I'm here.
Well, it's always a great pleasure. Thank you so much for agreeing to come in and do this. I don't even know what else to announce. Tomorrow is going to be the Transatlantic Call-In Show. I don't know what's going on. Over the weekend, we're going to have LineCon Online. I'll be part of that. Still don't necessarily know what's going on, but I'm going to do what I can. We got the Sunday show, which is now at 1 p.m. Central on Sundays, so keep that in mind as we move forward. And then the Sunday show after dark still at 7 p.m. Or is it 6 p.m.? No, it's 7 p.m. And then Monday's Skeptalk, Tuesday's Chewed Gum. Wednesday, I'll be back here with somebody else. Take care of yourself.